Restored Republic via GCR update. Judy note, the deep state global elite in Congress appeared to be out of control. For the most part they don't seem to be working for the people, but only to shape legislation so U.S. taxpayer monies would be laundered back into their own pockets. Every single year, $1 trillion in U.S. taxpayer money is lost to fraud. That's not a typo. That's $115 million every hour, $1.9 million every minute, $32,000 every second. And where does it go? Terrorism, child trafficking, luxury homes, designer bags, drugs, yachts, NGO front groups. Not to the American people. Not to roads. Not to vets. It funds the enemy. And it robs the working class blind. 2 years ago Fed Chairman Powell was implicated in running a gold products scam named after President Trump, who had nothing to do with it. May 23, 2024, Fed Chair Powell heading Trump gold products scam, so what is Trump doing about it? A lot. Maximum alert. Be prepared with food, cash and essentials. The EBS emergency broadcast system is about to begin its final phase, which includes 10 days of darkness, mass arrests, and nationwide operations, bank and ATM closures. A whopping 50,000 military troops have been mobilized to ensure arrests and lockdowns during the EBS, Quantum connected on Telegram. Sometime after Saturday, July 4, 2026, free Q phones will be given out to all people on Earth by the Global Military Alliance when they set up their money accounts, wallets, at redemption centers. Only you can access your monies through your Q phone. The free, completely secure and unhackable service will be used around the globe for banking, internet, texting, calling, voting and much more. A update, Janine Larrick, Caitlin Hunter, urgent plea to the White Hats, please free Janine Larrick, who remains in extreme danger. Janine has been illegally held at the Guernsey County, Ohio Sheriff Jail since June 1, 2026 without going before a judge, without legal representation, without a court hearing, without bond set and with falsified papers filed in court against her. What we thought we knew, but didn't really know and now are supposed to know but don't have a clue. With clones, doubles, made-up movies Hollywood style and Trump's military alliance throwing more popcorn at us, it gets so confusing. Thursday, June 18, 2026, White House releases footage of President Trump formally signing the Iran Peace Memorandum of Understanding in Versailles, France. As he departs for America, President Trump's team and Iran have just signed the Memorandum of Understanding to formally end the war, resume Strait of Hormuz traffic, ensure no nuclear Iran and more. Axios, Washington Post and We the People on Telegram. Thursday, June 18, 2026, Edward Griffin, the Federal Reserve System does not need to be audited, it needs to be abolished because it is a cartel operating against the public interests, generates our most unfair tax, encourages war, destabilizes the economy and is an instrument of totalitarian control. NESARA will be activated. The military will remove faction-controlled governments worldwide while simultaneously arresting 500,000 indicted individuals globally. 7 trumpets, also known as the EBS message, will arrive on your phone, instructing you to turn off your TV, radio, and phone. All military forces worldwide, including the United States, will block all media, internet, phones, and television programming. Emergency services will remain operational. During this time, the internet, ATMs, and phones will be down unless you're calling 911. This global martial law status will include a 10-day communications blackout, a global emergency broadcast system, and 3 8-hour documentaries on fraud, corruption, pedophilia, arrests, and tribunals worldwide. 1 day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The elite. After the 10-day communications blackout, we will connect to a new network. I love the internet. The old government, education, financial, healthcare, and commerce systems will be dismantled and replaced. Everything coming is absolutely wonderful, bam. Thursday, June 18, 2026, Project Odin equals EBS, Christian B. Wallace Tier 4B ISO 20022 on Telegram. We know that something powerful will take down the Mossad media satellite. This will cause a worldwide communications blackout, transitioning us to a quantum system. This is called Project Odin. In essence, it provides a reason to activate military EBS. Starlink is up and seemingly ready for the Army to activate the worldwide emergency broadcast system. The Odin project, as mentioned by Ron Code Monkeys, is a powerful cross-platform anti-cheat engine and part of Quantum Starlink. These new quantum systems are protected by secret space programs beyond the reach of the cabal. Q tells us that Mossad media assets will be eliminated. Has repeatedly stated that there will be a big biblical scenario where they present it as World War III, but in reality they will activate the military worldwide and then start bombing all this satanic place. This will release the NESARA/NESARA funds, and then we the people will begin to rebuild. This event is truly biblical. Some of the larger satanic Illuminati sites in the world, Q showed us things like Vatican, Buckingham Palace, White House, X2, USA, Germany, 3GD in China, CERN at Swiss/French border, possibly Big Pharma in Wuhan equals Israel/Khazarians control CCP communication, etc. 34 satanic buildings and dams will fall. Many events will also take place, such as rods of God/do, directed energy weapons used on Satan-targeted sites worldwide. Planes and trains will be grounded. Lights/energy will be turned off briefly as they switch to Tesla-free energy. Bitcoin server/data center will be hacked and shut down forever. 99.5% of cryptocurrencies will disappear, including Chinese coins. ISO 20022 coins backed by precious metals will be available. World War III scare event will take place. Nuclear siren water events. The stock market collapsed. Global martial arts rules. Castle Rock. Background: Julian Assange. Quantum System Odin project enabled NESARA, RV revealing the election through the military court. FISA military trial. 10 countries will run EBS for worldwide coverage. Tremendous truths revealed. Trump and Kennedy inaugurations. Israeli Mossad has controlled world media out of America. Project Odin is part of Quantum Starlink. The new quantum system will be protected by secret space programs beyond the reach of the cabal. Satanic media assets will be removed. Israeli intelligence was forced to withdraw. Media assets will be removed after communications are disabled. John F. Kennedy Jr. will appear. To convert to NESARA/greatness, they must play this fake World War III scenario to sound the sirens in each national military command center. This is to justify to the entire planet many things that have taken place. The NESARA military law was implemented, which included secret military tribunals, confessions, executions, etc. As usual, all armies will be there to help build new things. We have achieved freedom, saved our children and freed the world of corrupt governments and enslavers. Thursday, June 16, 2026. Worldwide blackout coming. Trump gives the go-ahead for a huge global military operation with EBS activation, thousands of elites set to be arrested. Quantum connected on Telegram. President Donald J. Trump has given the final go-ahead for a historic global military operation as the world stands on the edge of the greatest awakening ever. This will turn on the emergency broadcast system and take down the whole deep state cabal. People who know say that the plan to arrest thousands of powerful people who are involved in child trafficking and corruption started on April 1, 2026. In the next 48 hours, there will be a huge blackout around the world. There will be controlled lockdowns for 10 to 12 days. During certain 5-hour windows each day, citizens are told to stay inside while special forces make arrests. This is the storm that QAnons have been waiting for, the time when justice finally comes. Trump's loyal soldiers have been getting ready for years by mapping out underground tunnels and drug trafficking routes. The deep state is in a panic because their empire is falling apart. When the EBS turns on, it will take over all mainstream media. Every screen will be full of the truth about election fraud, crimes by Big Pharma, and elite pedophile rings. Starlink will make sure that the broadcasts reach every part of the world. Special forces will hit their targets with accuracy, taking out corrupt billionaires and officials who are hiding in bunkers. Only Trump is in charge of the global military alliance. Stockpiles are ready so that patriots won't have to go through any pain during this change. This operation will bring back real sovereignty. Under NESARA/NESARA, debts will be erased, borders will be protected, and the corrupt government will be destroyed. It's over for the Rothschild, Clintons, Gates, and their friends. It's the golden age. Stay on the line, patriots. We are winning the light in the battle. A new republic is born. Global currency reset. K. Judy note, it was my personal opinion based on the below that we could anticipate Tier 4B, us, the Internet Group, being notified to set exchange appointments sometime between Monday 22 June 22 and Sunday 28 of June. On Monday 2 of March, President Trump signed Executive Order 14,178. Banning CBDC development and ordering a digital asset strategic reserve. Since Monday 1st of June, redemption centers in 14 cities have been staffed and operational. Military personnel were present at each location. NDAs would be required. On Tuesday, June 9, 2026, the new gold/asset-backed quantum financial system went full global through the Starlink satellite system. On Wednesday, June 10, 2026, the old Cabal SWIFT system processed its last transaction. On Thursday, June 11, 2026 at 4:47 a.m. EST, the old banking SWIFT system died when JP Morgan executed its first live transaction through the XRP ledger. On Tuesday, June 16, 2026, Congress passed a bill that prohibited the Cabal from producing the fiat digital dollar, because the new gold/asset-backed currency was already in place across 209 nations. On Saturday, June 20, 2026, bondholders and Tier 3 were expecting to be notified, exchange and have access to their monies. Between Monday 22nd of June and Sunday 28th of June, Tier 4B, US, the Internet Group, notifications will be sent out. The first wave covered 1.2 million verified accounts. On Saturday, July 4, 2026, President Trump would announce the new gold standard currency. Wednesday, June 17, 2026 marks, a bondholder was receiving his money on Thursday, 18th of June. Other bondholders were expecting to have their money this weekend. All of Tier 3 were going to exchange this weekend. The U.S. Mint was putting out a $1 gold coin. The new gold standard will be announced by Trump on July 4. At that time, gold was expected to be worth from $1,500 to $2,000 an ounce. Silver was expected to be worth from $1,200 to $1,500 an ounce. Thursday, June 18, 2026 Bruce, the big call sources say Tier 4B, US, the Internet Group, could be notified for exchange appointments Tuesday, Wed 22, 23, 24th of June and start exchanges Wednesday, June 24, 2026. 1.2 million ZIM holders will get the first appointments. Trump signed a NEO abolishing the IRS. Cryptocurrency was live on the new financial system yesterday, Wednesday, June 17, 2026. Tariff dividends will be paid to U.S. citizens. The Clarity Act would be announced on Saturday, July 4, 2026. The announcement of a consumption tax of 12 to 14% cost of new goods that will replace income tax, state tax, real estate taxes, etc. was expected to be announced on Saturday, July 4, 2026. Israel will be last. Thursday, June 18, 2026. Benjamin Netanyahu says he will not comply with President Trump's peace deal with Iran and will strike Iran and Lebanon whenever he deems necessary. Netanyahu says he does not see eye to eye with Trump on the issue and that he is responsible for Israel's security. Netanyahu needs to be removed. Thursday, June 18, 2026. When mandated vaccines didn't happen and global warming lost interest of the public, the global elites at the World Economic Forum turned their interests to our tap water. They plan to add vaccines and other untested ingredients to public water supplies. They promise you will own nothing and be happy when these evil Satan worshippers can control the world. Thursday, June 18, 2026, explosive report, the Obama trap, why the SCOTUS immunity ruling in the Michael Flynn parallel could put Obama in the grand jury hot seat. Thursday, June 18, 2026, breaking special report, Carney calls it a rupture. Trump just cracked Iran after 47 years. Thursday, June 18, 2026, bombshell alert, Mike Pence criminally implicated in classified leaking scandal. Thursday, June 18, 2026, breaking, Moscow under fire, massive drone assault ignites fires, shakes key infrastructure, and sends air defenses into action. Thursday, June 18, 2026, WEF plans to poison your water with vaccine. The global elites at the World Economic Forum have turned their evil eyes to your tap water. Thursday, June 18, 2026, FBI raids Soros-backed Ohio voter group HQ and major fraud probe, Pastor Bob Joyce, Elvis, on Telegram. Agents hit the Ohio Organizing Collaborative, OOC, a nonprofit that registered over 100,000 voters and pushes hard left ballot fights, seizing devices and questioning staff statewide. Past canvasser already convicted of fraud in 2017. Millions in Soros cash is behind it, fueling fraud. The DOJ/FBI investigation centers on potential fraud violations tied to OX voter registration and mobilization activities. A DOJ official stated that search warrants were judge-approved. The 2017 guilty plea consisted of a paid canvasser working with OX pleaded guilty to running a fraudulent voter registration operation. Soros has strong funding ties to the OIC, receiving significant backing from George Soros, over $1.9 million from the Foundation to Promote Open Society, 2019 to 2020. $1 million plus from the Open Society Action Fund, including 2021 and 2023 grants, additional funding via New Venture Fund and Tides Foundation, support from unions including American Federation of Teachers and Service Employees International Union. OIC reported over $10 million in revenue in 2024. OIC spent $250,000 in 2023 to oppose a GOP-backed effort on abortion rights and $300,000 in 2024 against Republican redistricting initiatives. It works closely with the Democratic Party on voter efforts. Board member Prentice Haney called the timing of the raid an attempt to intimidate civil rights leaders and voters during a contested election season, because they know their fraud operations have been exposed. The raid is a significant development in voter fraud operations, targeting a heavily Soros-funded progressive voter group. The investigation remains ongoing with limited public details released so far. This is a huge step in the right direction with a lot more to follow. The election fraud days are coming to an end. Thursday, June 18, 2026. Edward Griffin on the Federal Reserve. When I did my research on this topic, I came to the conclusion that the Federal Reserve System does not need to be audited, it needs to be abolished. The reason I say that is because if they audit the Federal Reserve System, they would find out that it is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's all out in the open. It's one of the greatest scams of all history. Out on the surface. It must be abolished for 7 reasons. Black small square emoji, it is incapable of accomplishing its stated objectives. Black small square emoji, it is a cartel operating against the public interests. Black small square emoji, it is the supreme instrument of usury. Black small square emoji, it generates our most unfair tax. Black small square emoji, it encourages war. Black small square emoji, it destabilizes the economy. Black small square emoji, it is an instrument of totalitarian control. Thursday, June 18, 2026. On June 10, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth flew to Guantanamo Bay. The media told you it was about rising tensions with Cuba. He did bench presses with the troops. He ran with soldiers at dawn. He smiled for cameras. That was the cover, SG on Telegram. What he actually did, at 9:47 p.m. that night, after the cameras left, was inspect 3 newly completed detention wings that do not appear in any public construction record. Capacity, 240 individuals. Climate-controlled. Soundproofed. Built between January and May 2026 under a classified infrastructure order signed by Trump on December 19, 2025. These wings are not for foreign combatants. 5 days later, on June 15, Gavin Newsom went on camera and told the world that Trump's DOJ is investigating him and his wife. He looked terrified. He called it politically motivated. He begged the public for sympathy. He already knows what is coming. I am going to tell you what I was told on June 11, one day after Hegseth's visit. There are currently 412 sealed federal indictments filed across 7 jurisdictions since February 2026. Not all are political. But 83 of them are. Names you have seen on television for decades. Names that told you Trump was the threat while they were the criminals. Newsom is not the target. Newsom is the door. His investigation leads to a financial network that connects Sacramento to 3 foreign governments. His wife's foundation received $14.2 million from entities that no longer exist on paper. Kash Patel jumped the gun this week by announcing the UFC plot arrests before the Secret Service was ready. Why? Because he is tired of waiting. The man has a list. And the list is longer than anyone in Washington wants to admit. Trump is in France right now. At the G7. Smiling. Shaking hands. While his Justice Department is dismantling them at home. This is not political retribution. This is the constitutional process they told you would never come. Grand juries. Evidence. Sealed filings. Judges who cannot be pressured because they were appointed for life. The first satisfactions will be made public before August 1, 2026. Not all 83. But enough to make the rest panic. Enough to trigger resignations. Enough to prove that no one is above the law, not even the people who spent 8 years telling you that phrase only applied to Trump. Hegseth inspected the rooms. Patel has the names. The grand juries have the evidence. And the man in France has the patience to let it all unfold legally. Gitmo wings 240 sealed 412 7 jurisdictions on seal phase 1080. The storm was never a metaphor.
Hello Patriots, I'm at Restored Republic via a GCR update compiled by Judy Byington. The Obama family is a manufactured farce that was used by cabal-controlled CIA to destroy our nation from within, said John F. Kennedy on Telegram. Are Barack Obama's children even his? No, they're not actually. Or did he rent them from his campaign chairman? Chairman of the Obama Foundation, Martin Nesbitt, sure looks like Malia and Natasha Obama. He sits on the boards of directors of publicly traded companies like CenterPoint Energy, Norfolk Southern Railroad Corporation, and American Airlines Group. He was on the board of the Chicago Housing Authority, which I believe Big Mike was part of. Martin Nesbitt, close personal friend of Obama, and was also the campaign treasurer during Obama's 2008 presidential campaign. Imagine if a foreign Muslim asset infiltrated our highest level of government as president with his fake birth certificate and fake transgender wife, created a fake family to destroy our nation from within. Then Obama went after President Trump, and it was all done directly by the CIA and their media assets they own. A big mistake they're all about to realize. Judy note. Below is an article I wrote 3 years ago that points out the Obama, Biden, Clinton, Pelosi criminality that has yet to hit the national news, let alone be recognized by the general public. One would ask why was there little or no interest in the workings of the deep state globalists, since the purpose of the Obama administration appeared to be changing America from a democratic regime to socialist and communism. If it weren't for Trump, they would have made it. I purposefully left in the Article 14 references, even though most of which have since been erased from the internet, to show the censorship we still face today. Saturday, April 22nd, 2023, and then the link is Obama, Biden behind arming ISIS Benghazi, SEAL Team 6 massacres. Judy note. Speaking of censorship, for years I have almost daily posted articles and updates on the internet's largest news organization before its news. That is until last Monday. This has yet to correct the problem, and I haven't been able to post all week. This is the third time this has happened. You'd think I was publishing something the deep state didn't want you to know. EBS alert. Very soon, everyone worldwide will receive 7 emergency broadcast system text messages on their cell phones urging us to go home and stay for 10 days, though the EBS could last 3 to 6 weeks. Be prepared. During those 10 days, banks will close. The internet and ATMs will not work, and phones will only work for 911 calls. You can obtain a signal app from the military which will work your phone. On TVs and radios worldwide, the EBS will play 8-hour documentaries 3 times a day for 10 days. 10 days of communication darkness. After the 10 days of communication darkness, all phones, TVs, radios, and computers worldwide run on the secure Starlink satellite system. All peoples of the world will be called into redemption centers where we will receive NESARA payments, can exchange and redeem our currency in Zim, and set up secure bank accounts identified by our own body rhythms through the new quantum system. Banks will no longer have access to our monies. Possible timing. On Monday, March 2nd, President Trump signed Executive Order 14178, banning CBDC development and ordering a digital asset strategic reserve. Since Monday, June 1st, redemption centers in 14 cities have been staffed and operational. Military personnel were present at each location. NDAs would be required. On Tuesday, June 9th, the new gold asset-backed quantum financial system went full global through the Starlink satellite system. On Wednesday, June 10th, the old Cabal SWIFT system processed its last transaction. On Thursday, June 11th, 2026, at 4:47 a.m., the old banking SWIFT system died when JP Morgan executed its first live transaction through the XRP ledger. On Tuesday, June 16th, Congress passed a bill that prohibited the cabal from producing the fiat digital dollar. because the new gold asset-backed currency was already in place across 209 nations. On Saturday, June 20th, 2026, bondholders in Tier 3 were expecting to be notified, exchange, and have access to their monies. Between Monday, June 22nd and Sunday, June 28th, Tier 4B notifications will be sent out. The first wave covered 1.2 million verified accounts. Saturday, July 4th, President Trump would announce the new gold standard currency. And remember, this is an event-driven war, so the dates are fluid. EBS blackout martial law lockdowns. Wednesday, June 17th, EBS activation. Quantum connected on Telegram. No time frames have been given for EBS activation. There have been many suspicions on time limits. Absolutely nothing has been set in stone about any of it. Absolutely no one knows, and it is designed that way for a reason. It will happen when it is time. When it happens, follow the EBS instructions to the letter. All we have been told by the operator who is dialed in: number 1, everyone will be home, and 2, it will happen at the top of the hour. The general consensus in decoder groups is to be ready for 3 to 6 weeks. Everything has already been factored in. You will be fine. Do not panic. Worldwide, we will receive 7 trumpets, aka EBS text messages on our phones, alerting us on what is happening and urging us to tune into our TVs and radios. We will be urged to go and stay at home for at least 10 days, though the EBS could last 3 to 6 weeks. Worldwide, on TVs and radios, the EBS will play 8-hour documentaries 3 times a day for 10 days, called 10 Days of Communication Darkness. Worldwide, the internet and ATMs will not work during the 10 days. Worldwide, phones will work for 911 calls, 911 calls, but we can obtain a signal app from the military, which will secure the phones for regular use through this new Starlink satellite system and quantum computer. The documentaries will cover topics of arrests, tribunals, fraud, corruption, pedophilia. After the 10 days of communication darkness, all phones, TVs, radio, and computers worldwide will be connected to the new quantum internet, run on the secure Starlink satellite system. All peoples of the world will be called into redemption centers where we will receive NESARA payments, can exchange and redeem our currency and ZIM, and set up secure bank accounts identified by our own body rhythms. Through the new quantum system, banks will no longer have access to our monies. Global currency reset. Judy note: from the below sources, it appeared we could anticipate Tier 4B, us, the internet group, being notified to set exchange appointments sometime between Monday, June 22nd and Sunday, June 28th. Wednesday, June 17th, Mark Z, a bondholder, was receiving his money on Thursday, June 18th. Other bondholders were expecting to have their money this weekend. All of Tier 3 were going to exchange this weekend. The U.S. Mint was putting out a $1 gold coin. The new gold standard will be announced by Trump on July 4th. At that time, gold was expected to be worth from $1,500 to $2,000 an ounce. Silver was expected to be worth from $1,200 to $1,500 an ounce. I would think gold would be a lot more than that, because right now, isn't it around $3,500 an ounce, or somewhere around there, $4,000, $3,500? But I guess we'll see. Silver that's a huge jump for silver. So that's good if you're collecting silver. Wednesday, June 17th, update. On June 11th, 2026 at 4:47 a.m., the old banking system died when JP Morgan executed its first live transaction through the XRP ledger, connected to Ondo Finance, connected to MasterCard, routed through ISO 20022 protocol. No press conference, no announcement. SWIFT processed its last independent transaction on June 10th. Since June 11th, every single cross-border settlement between the 47 participating institutions has been routed through the new ledger, not tested live, processing $4.2 billion per hour as you read this. Congress passed the CBDC prohibition clause on June 16th, buried inside a housing bill. No standard loan vote. No debate. They banned the government digital dollar permanently through 2030 because the people's system is already operational and they cannot compete with it. They did not ban CBDC because they don't want digital currency. They banned it because the replacement already exists and it's decentralized. Tier 4B notifications begin between June 22nd and June 28th. The first wave covers 1.2 million verified accounts. Since June 1st, redemption centers in 14 cities have been staffed and operational. Military personnel are present at each location. NDAs will be required. The exchange rates you've been told are not public yet, but the structure is locked, gold-backed, ASIP verified, quantum encrypted through Starshield satellite coverage that went full global on June 9th. The man who signed Executive Order 14178 on March 2nd, banning CBDC development and ordering a digital asset strategic reserve, did not do it for Wall Street. He did it for you, every patriot who held, every person who was called crazy, every family that believed when the world laughed. Israel will be last. Wednesday, June 17th, President Trump just dunked on Israel for committing war crimes against civilians. So the tide is turning now. He's beginning to turn against Israel. I knew this was coming eventually. So that's a good thing. We're getting closer. Israel has been fighting Hezbollah too long, and too many people are being killed, and you don't have to knock down an apartment house every time you're looking for somebody, because there are a lot of people in those apartment houses, and they're not all Hezbollah. That can tell you. And I suggested to Israel to let Syria take care of Hezbollah, because to be honest with you, I think they do a better job of doing it. Mr. Poole on Telegram. And according to Charlie Ward, Hezbollah is paid for and sponsored by Israel, and that's their excuse to go in, and it's a land grab. A Lebanon land grab is what he said. And I'm not surprised. So I think there's a lot of secrets that are held about Israel we're going to find out that are not good. Wednesday, June 17th, breaking. Benjamin Netanyahu says he will not comply with President Trump's peace deal with Iran and will strike Iran and Lebanon whenever he deems necessary. Pompous ass. I'm sorry. Netanyahu says he does not see eye to eye with Trump on the issue and that he is responsible for Israel's security. Netanyahu needs to be removed. EBS Live on Telegram. He's a walking ego. Probably a clone. I don't think that's the original Netanyahu. AI mind control. Wednesday, June 17, 2026. French intelligence agency drops Palantir AI tech over U.S. dependency and spying fears. The Gateway Pundit by Paul Sarin.
We have Leo Zagami back with us again. He's always very informative. This one is a very good one. We're going to be talking about ETs in the Vatican. Wow, what a combination. And of course, Leo has the deepest insights that are very informative and are going to take us to another level. And you actually have a new book. Is that correct?
A new book, which is basically the Vatican's top secret alien agenda. And this is a book that is already been #1 in the UFO section of Amazon. So if you want to get your copy, you can do it. It's available on Amazon. And you can also, of course, go and check out, let's say, a synthesis of it on my website, leozagami.com, together with my latest articles based on this groundbreaking book, which is in collaboration with the Italian Centro Ufologico Nazionale, the Ufological National Center of Italy, which was born almost 60 years ago, and his co-founder Roberto Pinotti, who has been my mentor in this field and one of the most eminent ufologists in the world. So we have definitely a lot to discuss, especially because we are seeing one more dump after the other regarding these UAP files, as they call them today. And there is definitely groundbreaking revelations connecting this whole disclosure and the control of the narrative by the Vatican.
Yeah, very good. So here's a picture of the book, exposing the Vatican's top secret alien agenda. antidote to Spielberg's psyop. So you're going to give us a lot of insights here. So this is
Yeah, I was actually privy to information, don't ask me how, regarding the script of Steven Spielberg's movie. And so I created an antidote with this book. You can actually already read about the movie in this book in real time as you go and see it. Hidden Encounters, Forbidden Rituals, and Jesuit Astronomers in the Age of UFO Disclosure. It's the only book that talks about this topic of great importance, because you see, we have in the last 9 years since that famous TikTok video appeared, and then the article in the New York Times, suddenly we had these people popping out of nowhere like Luis Elizondo from the Pentagon, or David Grush later on in 2023. But in reality, they are all Jesuit informers and disinfo agents. But in reality, I will call them gatekeepers, because it's not fair to call them disinfo agents. They are actually trying to control the narrative. So they try to do it in a way that is preparing for ultimate disclosure, but they will never give you the ultimate form of disclosure, because it's a problem that concerns, of course, as you can imagine, national security, because this whole thing is connected with what we call the legacy program. Now, the legacy program is a program of reverse engineering which links the CIA, the United States Air Force, and the defense contractors. And they don't really have an intention to fully disclose everything, but they are definitely creating a lot of theater around it. And there is now, I don't know if you saw the latest nomination of Avi Loeb, who is supposed to be in charge of this scientific committee, that finally, they say, oh, Avi Loeb is a guy who was always fighting the system about this. And it's like they are creating false narratives. Like, for example, Jeremy Corbell. Nobody knew who he was 10 years ago. Now, he's the guy that with his new documentary film is portrayed like the martyr of ufology, risking his life to give us all the truths. So I'm trying here to demystify and create the reality here of this disclosure. You understand, Michael? Because when I published the previous book regarding this subject, which was Invisible Master, I then inserted my first take on certain things, but we were just at the beginning of it all. But I thought it was perfect at that moment to give a different look and a different prospect. And it actually went very well. But when I arrived here in the United States, and the first place where I ended was Contact in the Desert, I kind of it smelled of government spooks all over the place. And I wanted to really understand who was controlling these UFO conferences, who was behind it all. And in the end, I discovered it was, of course, the Vatican. And this year, like I write in my book, Daniel Sheehan, I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's like a famous UFO advocate, but also a very famous attorney, a little bit progressive liberal. He used to be a Jesuit. He was a former Jesuit novitiate who left the Jesuits, became for 10 years their legal advisor of the Jesuit headquarters, and at the same time became the instigator for a lot of the UFO movement that we have here in the United States today. He is the lawyer of Luis Elizondo, he is the lawyer of Stephen Greer. So you see, everything is controlled here. In my book, you can see how David Grush is actually a complete puppet who says, oh, yes, I follow Professor Pasulka, the late Professor Tigman. Now, for normal people, they will not really understand what that means. But David Grush is a Catholic and is a Jesuit agent, just as another figure that you might have heard of that is actually one of the major gatekeepers of the whole game here. Al Puthoff of the Stargate project that used to be, of course, involved with the whole remote viewing thing, no? So the DIA, the CIA, the whole show then provided us what we saw in The Man Who Stared at Goats, that famous film. That it's one of the few films I can actually see with George Clooney that doesn't make me puke because he's usually such a lefty Scrooge in his movies. I can't stand it. But that movie is actually a very good movie that needs to be seen. So
I agree.
my intention with this book was this. There was a lot of material that was not accessible in the English-speaking world because it was only published in Italy and France. And these researchers were not American, and they never really... so I contacted Roberto Pinotti, and then thanks to him, I was able to also access the work of Alfredo Lissoni, who is a professor of religion who in the early 2000s was able to research the UFO, the UAP as they call it phenomenon now, the UAP, but I always call it UFO because in the end, let's call it UFO to be more, it's more simple.
I think they do that on purpose to confuse us.
It's a little bit, but I mean, there is some motivations for calling it UAP. I explain in this book. One of the main motivation is the plasmic non-human intelligence, the so-called orbs, various orbs that also communicate at times with the people who interact with them. That is not really an object, nuts and bolts. So for that reason, you can actually have one of these orbs inside your home. Now, you can't really have a UFO inside your living room, but you can have that in your living room. So that justifies, in a way, the name UAP. But aside from that, we still prefer the old one. So what happened was that the Vatican archives are 53 miles under the Vatican of archives, of secret archives, often regarding the cases of beatification or sanctification of saints. So when you are actually making a saint, you have to evaluate all the paranormal phenomena around it. And often it included also what we now call UAP. So the whole thing regarding the Vatican is that they have one of the biggest archives that contains the mysteries of it all. And I wanted to have access to it, but it was impossible for me. Thanks to this guy called Alfredo Lissoni, who is a professor of religion, he went inside there asserting he was studying Christian legends. So, if he said he was studying UFOs or UAP, they would have not let him in. But he was able to go in. Aside from the 53 miles of the secret Vatican archives, now known as the Vatican Apostolic Archive, there is also a Vatican library. And the Vatican library is another 23 miles of material. Now, the archives contain mostly all the various correspondence with heads of states for the last 1,000 years, the Vatican, every secret possible and imaginable, also, like we said, for the cause of beatification or sanctification of states. But then you have also the books, the forbidden books, the books that at times us normal folk are never meant to read. And of course, the level of security that they have to accede to these archives, which I have put in the front. You see, this is actually an image from the Secret Vatican Archive.
Wow.
And imagine, it's 53 miles of this stuff.
Good God.
So I was able to include a lot of research done in the archives, but at the same time, I was also able to expose those people that the Vatican is using for this disclosure project. Now, we know that the heads of the New World Order, as I always said, in my last two books, the Jesuits and the Sabbatean Frankists, okay? Now, the film of Steven Spielberg is exactly that. The script by Steven Spielberg, who is, of course, a well-known sympathizer of Chabad Lubavitch and the Sabbatean Frankists. And at the same time, the screenplay by a guy, David Coep, who is a Catholic Jesuit agent who has inserted in the movie a lot of these Jesuit references. Like, for example, one of the protagonists is a former nun, or there is a nun in a monastery that talks about extraterrestrials, and she actually cites a phrase given by a famous Catholic saint. So all this is very much constructed in a way that we embrace the extraterrestrials as our friends, regardless of their danger. This is very important because you see, the Vatican, like I explain in my book, started preparing for disclosure in the 1950s, actually in the 1930s.
Wow.
And I have documents to prove that, because you remember when David Grush came out in front of Congress in 2023, and he said then that there was, of course, reverse engineering, this and that. And then later on, he went on record with some newspapers and media, and he said the Pope Pius XII was involved in the retrieval of a UFO in northern Italy in 1933 that Mussolini had taken, and then thanks to him, the UFO ended up in the hands of the Americans after the war. In my book, I have the original documents from Mussolini.
Wow.
Ordering the journalist Absolute Science, and these documents were given to us by this guy who is no longer alive, who is the grandson of Mussolini, because he betrayed him, Galeazzo Ciano. So this guy, Fabrizio Ciano, at the end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s, he started, before he died, of course, to send these documents out to some researchers that I know, Roberto Pinotti and Alfredo Lissoni, and then also another guy called Bongiovanni. He did it in a very mysterious way. He didn't want, and also to some newspaper, but he didn't want to, it wasn't only regarding the UFO crash in Magenta. It was also regarding a series of UFO events. And these are all official documents, forensically analyzed. So there is no debunking. The guy who analyzed it is this guy here in the center, who used to be one of Italy's most known forensic analysts. The guy who did the book, collaborated with me, he was in the military, working with NATO. He founded 60 years ago this Italian ufologic center. And so when he was working for the 3rd Battalion of Nuclear Missile, which of course at that point you have as you know, a very high up security clearance, the American officers of NATO that were involved with him went to him and said, we know that you like this subject. He was actually presenting it formally to the Italian, I think it was a armed forces event that he organized with the Italian armed forces. So these Americans went then and he said to Roberto, well, we have actually retrieved UFOs in America, and we have the bodies of aliens. This was actually in the early 70s this happened. So from there on, Roberto, of course, was already a firm believer and became even a bigger believer. But how did he become a believer? Okay, Roberto is born in 1944, the same year as my mother. In 1954, something very strange happened in Florence. During a soccer match, suddenly, a massive amount of UFOs appeared over the stadium. They had to interrupt the soccer match in the end because of all these UFOs over Florence. So imagine interrupting a soccer match in Italy is like interrupting a mass. I mean, Italians, for them, soccer is a religion. They were all watching in the sky and nobody was watching the match anymore. So then at that point, the referee had to interrupt the match. And then they picked up when all this UFO activity eventually will disappear. It was, at that point, he was 10 years old. He understood he's grown up a passion for it. But in 1954, the day after this happened in Florence, the American ambassador also witnessed these UFOs over Rome. And this American ambassador became also very relevant in this story because she was connected with President Eisenhower. And President Eisenhower will actually allegedly have a couple of close encounters of the third kind in the early 50s with both the Greys and the Nordics. But in 1954, the most interesting thing was that the Vatican, there was one of the ambassadors for the Vatican, a guy called Alberto Perego, who was there in St. Peter's Square. Suddenly, he sees a squadron of 40 UFOs over St. Peter's Square.
Wow.
At that point, that's when the Vatican exopolitical game started. That's when we finally have the birth of the exopolitical interest, which then becomes even more important and relevant a few years later, when a pope that had been initiated in a lodge and then had this contact experience, a guy called Roncalli, who will become Pope John the 23rd, in July 1961 had himself an encounter of the third kind in Castel Gandolfo. This is a pope, the pope who gave birth to the Second Vatican Council. And so before starting the council, he meets with an extraterrestrial. That changed the whole course of the council and what it was supposed to mean for the church. In fact, you remember how many times we have discussed the importance of the Second Vatican Council in the creation of the one world religion? Many times on your show, many times, because I've discussed in volume 12, I've discussed in other books, in volume 7. It's always been a very important topic for me, the fact that the Vatican is gathering together all these faiths. But what is the reason? The reason is that once you have disclosure, automatically everybody goes to the religious leader, not to their politicians. And so the Vatican, wanted to prepare for that. Now you have the evangelicals who, as you know, there was an accident that happened just in May, at the end of May, in which a famous politician had allegedly said certain things. And that alleged politician said these things to a group of pastors that came together. Then one of these pastors went on the air during a podcast and said, well, I can't tell you who he was, but what he said was so scary, and we were all scared. Then, like a few days after, he had to basically do a whole disclaimer about it. Because, of course, the man in black had gone to him, and he was like forced into damage control. There is actually a video I have of this guy, and he looks, yes, it was not the words of this politician, it was my words. So let's understand who this politician was and what was said. The politician was Congressman Eric Burleson, who's been one of the most outspoken Republican members regarding the UAP disclosure. Just a few days ago, they were on the stairs of Congress. You remember, with David Grush also and many other, Paulina Luna, and it was a bipartisan effort. We saw David Grush at the podium of this task force on the declassification of federal secrets that on June 9, admitted, and there was also bullshit, of course, that somebody's mentioning in the chat. These people didn't blink an eye when David Grush said, we have aliens, alive aliens.
Wow.
No, we're not talking about reverse engineering and spaceships, which was already something. You're talking about live biological material of a non-terrestrial origin. And this, of course, was said by somebody who had the highest level of security clearance, like David Grush. But David Grush can say those things because he's authorized by the Jesuits. So my point in making this book was to explain who is behind Luis Elizondo, David Grush, all the people that were the Sierra Content in the desert, George Knapp, Jeremy Cobb, every single person, every time you put the TV on, you get the same people. It's like a mantra.
Stephen Greer.
Stephen Greer is a massive Vatican stooge. In fact, just 3 weeks ago, he admitted, I was in the Vatican and I stayed in the apartment over St. Peter's Square of Monsignor Balducci. He admitted it. He admitted that he stays in the apartment with this guy, and this guy, well, we know him because this is Monsignor Balducci, where Stephen Greer stayed in the Vatican. The guy next to him is the guy I made the book with, Roberto Pinotti.
Wow.
He wrote the preface for one of his books. So to actually, it's quite incredible because when there was Content in the Desert this year, if you all go on YouTube, there is a site for Content in the Desert. You have one of the rare public videos that you can find there, because otherwise you have to go on the paying of the website, and you have to pay for viewing the various lectures. There is one lecture that is public, and it's Daniel Sheehan. And he admits in front of the cameras, when one guy said, so what about the Vatican? He says, Pope Leo XIV has invited me to Castel Gandolfo.
Wow.
And he admitted that all the ufologic movement, even before Content in the Desert, he was there from the start. That means the Jesuits were there from the start.
Wow. So you also say, and I can't wait to read your book. I have it. I've already downloaded it.
I know that you are an avid reader, and I can't wait for you to read it because I know that it's going to be a follow-up to this interview. It's going to be massive.
Zachariah Sitchin.
Absolutely, man.
Oh, my God. The Anunnaki Chronicles, the 12th Planet. I read all those books, and he's involved here in the Vatican. Oh, my God.
Photos. I mean, I'm bringing the receipts here. This guy next to him is a P2 member that I know very well.
Wow.
Gianmario Ferramonti was the co-founder with me of Italians for Time, so I know him very well. Gianmario Ferramonti became the guy who brought the evidence. You see, after Zaccaria Sitchin met with Monsignor Balducci, the guy who met with Stephen Greer, the guy I showed you earlier.
Wow.
After they met, they started to exchange material, even alien material. And this guy, who is Gianmario Ferramonti, who has also a background in technology, was functioning as the guy who would bring the material from Zaccaria Sitchin to Balducci, from Balducci to Zaccaria Sitchin.
Good God. Wow.
So in my book, I also talk, and nobody knows this aside from very few people, Zaccaria Sitchin had an encounter of the third kind that saved his life.
Really?
He was about to die of an illness. He didn't know he had this illness. One night, an Anunnaki showed in front of his bed.
Wow.
And he said, you have to have immediately this operation. I think it was, I'm not sure, it could be the heart, but something else. He said, you have to have immediately this operation. And it saved his life.
Good gosh.
What happened with Zaccaria Sitchin is that he then relayed the same tale also, not only to Gianmario Ferramonti, but also to Jordan Maxwell. And I knew Jordan Maxwell because the late Jordan Maxwell used to live nearby.
Wow.
And Jordan Maxwell confirmed to me that Zaccaria Sitchin had this happening. So very few people know about this encounter of the third kind of Zaccaria Sitchin.
Yeah, good. Wow. You've rubbed elbows with a lot of amazing people. And I always wondered, it's like he's always talking about we got this information from cuneiform tablets. I'm like, come on, you got all this stuff from these ancient tablets. So now we know you got the information. You got it handed to him on a silver platter. Wow.
Well, he was definitely able to bring his research one step further once he could accede to the Vatican archives. Like we just said earlier in the show, they are a very important part here. For example, the Vatican has some major gatekeepers that work for them, like we said, David Grush, but not only David Grush. Professor Pazulka, for example, I don't know if you ever heard of her. She's a professor of religious studies who has published a book which is now very powerful and deemed very influential, called American Cosmic. In the book American Cosmic, she doesn't really confirm who are these people, the characters. She makes fictional names for them. I put the real names in my book, and they are big shots. Like one of the people that is involved with, because Pazulka was a professor of religious studies, that one day was after she met with Jacques Vallée, who became her mentor. Jacques Vallée is a very influential figure because Jacques Vallée works for the Legacy Program. The Legacy Program, I repeat, is the Department of Energy, which is the descendant of the Manhattan Project, the CIA, and the various defense contractors. As soon as they see a UFO, they need to get it, because that, and sometimes they actively work with these remote viewers to bring down these UFOs. So they could, because the problem in my book, I show how there is a UAP reverse engineering program in the United States, in Russia, and in China. Now, this week, they confirmed, even New York Post confirmed that's true. And so it's not, and in my book, though, I actually show who was directing this. Because, for example, this guy here, you see with all these medals, a Soviet, Lieutenant Colonel Savin. He is used to be in the Soviet times the head of the Unit 1003, unit of remote viewers. On the other side of the Atlantic, doing exactly the same job as he was doing, there was this other guy who nowadays you see at times, like in the Age of Disclosure documentary. Have you ever seen this guy? This guy is Al Puthoff. Al Puthoff is the guy who wants to classify a reality, wants to limit our truth. He's extremely controlling of everything. His level of security clearance is on top of the current president of the United States. So when you have Trump saying, well, there is these pilots who told me this and that, the problem, like I explain in my book, is like, and this was confirmed not only in the film Disclosure Day, but also by Marco Rubio in the documentary The Age of Disclosure, they are informed only on a need-to-know basis. So they don't really know anything. They know what they, the minimum they can know. Of course, there has been some presidents more involved, like, for example, in 1973, Nixon had a direct encounter of the first kind, or Eisenhower. But this doesn't happen with every president. So it's very important to realize that at the moment, the Vatican is in a state of panic. I explain what is happening because the Secretary of State of the Vatican has now forbidden any representative of the Vatican to discuss the topic. 10 years ago, the Pope was actually saying, let's baptize an extraterrestrial. Then we had, of course, the Jesuits, who even wrote a book about baptizing extraterrestrials. The Jesuits from the Specula Vaticana, this guy in particular, Guy Consolmagno. The Pope now has gone back to the summer usually the summer residence of the Pope, since Pope Francis had transformed it in a museum in 2016, was not really relevant anymore. But it was at the same time the headquarters of the astronomical section of the Jesuits, called the Specula Vaticana, of the Vatican Observatory. That Vatican Observatory is one of the most advanced in the world and is connected directly to Mount Graham in Arizona, where they have very important telescopes, including that infrared that covers the actual telescope, which was known as Lucifer and now is known as Lucy. They actually have two of those, Lucy 1 and 2 now.
Right.
But the Vatican didn't want this association with the name Lucifer. So they scrapped it off their website. They said, no, it's a consortium of German universities. We have nothing to do with it. I exposed them. I have the links, the documents. So, but the problem is that there is some connections here that are absolutely mind-blowing. Let me show you something. These are pictures that are pretty shocking. Now, the one on the left is a young Al Puthoff next to Phil Corso. Phil Corso, you heard of Phil Corso? The guy who talked about reverse engineering in Roswell. He was in Roswell.
Okay.
This is Alexander, John B. Alexander, the guy from the Stargate project, the colonel who was in charge of the various psychological operations, but he was mainly in charge of the Stargate project also. And next to him, you have also a very young George Knapp. This photo is unique, but the photo here on top is also unique. In this photo, the guy in the center is Teller, one of the main people of the Manhattan Project. You see, all these so-called UFO crashes happened where? In New Mexico. It's not only Roswell.
Yep.
So let's go back to that Professor Pasulka that I was discussing earlier with you. Why she's so important? Because she became the disciple of Jacques Vallée. After that, she was blindfolded and brought to a crash site in New Mexico where she was given evidence. But she was not alone. She was with a new guy who operates a front for the CIA, which is currently employed internationally for this disclosure. It's called the Soul Foundation. He's called Gary Nolan. And together with Professor Scatfish, they're in charge of the Soul Foundation. Have you ever heard of the Soul Foundation?
Mm-mm.
Please go on Google and put Soul, S-O-L Foundation. It's going to blow your mind what these people are doing in front of our eyes. Because they have done a secret meeting last year in Italy, but the previous meetings were here in California, and the Soul Foundation is, like I said, a front organization of the CIA.
Oh, wow.
And see what they're doing. Science, policy, and public education for the post-UAP world. They're already preparing for after the UAP is revealed, the aliens are revealed.
Wow.
So it's very much advanced, this whole thing. Now, bringing Professor Pasulka to this UFO crash site, Professor Pasulka is also, you see, the people involved, these are all CIA shields. Go from the top, the guy Gary Nolan, that guy there worked with classified stuff. He's the biggest expert of orbs and non-human intelligence. The guy next to him is Peter Scatfish, which is a really big deal in this world of the controlled disclosure by the Vatican. So this, and then you have Professor Pasulka, who was blindfolded and made the convert to the UFO, because these people actually have evidence. They actually are the ones working with the legacy program. So my book is exposing something that nobody has ever exposed before. Then you have Jennifer Preston, which is, these are all CIA shields. You know, I mean, you've been in the CIA. You know how they operate.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not telling you anything
They
new.
have a lot of, they want complete control over this UAP, UFO.
But then remember, Catholics in Action, CIA.
I'm starting to see that now. Another thing that really surprised me in your second chapter, you talk about Giordano Bruno, who was burned at the stake, and I thought he was burned at the stake because of his heliocentric views, and he wouldn't recant. But you're saying there's some kind of UFO connection?
Well, he made a whole book called The Infinito Universi et Mondi, on the infinite universe on the worlds, where he was basically stating that there were other inhabited worlds. That was not for the Vatican something you could accept. Imagine that he was actually brought on the stake in Campo dei Fiori with a thing over his mouth, like
so he
couldn't even talk to anybody and say anything. You see. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Giordano Bruno. Giordano Bruno was a monk, first of all, no?
A Benedictine, right?
No, I think he was actually Dominican. If I don't get it wrong. He was basically a guy who, as a monk, was very well versed in things.
Brilliant guy. I read a lot of his stuff. I didn't know about that book though. That's pretty wild.
I think that actually I have probably all of his books here.
Wow.
So I mean, I have actually some rare ones that
I gotta come visit someday. Jeez.
One day, no, I have to show you one day one of these books, because they have also. He used to make also images that looked like the ones that later we will have in the how you call them?
Flying saucer.
No, the ones on in the field, the images that you find in
yeah, the crop circles.
Yes, crop circles.
Wow.
Crop circles. Yes, crop circles, because crop circles. Now, is an interesting thing regarding crop circles. So you see, in the movie Disclosure Day, at one point, you actually see this guy who, while he's talking on the phone, the crop circle is forming around him.
Wow.
In my book, I explain that actually there was an image that was drawn. I think, let me see if I can find you the name. There is actually an image, a specific image made a few centuries ago called, I think, the Morning Devil, of a demon making this crop circle in England. Let me see if I can find it for you. The Mowing Devil is called. It's actually.
So it's from centuries ago. Wow.
Yeah, let me show you, so we can actually show it to your public. You see, that is actually a demon.
Yeah, I've seen that before. That's wild.
And they're actually doing a crop circle.
They had to explain it some way, because when they couldn't explain it, they said it's demons.
Well, that is the interesting thing about, you see, the whole book, because I try to be as biased as possible on this, unbiased. You say unbiased? Yes, unbiased. Not biased, but unbiased. I try to give an idea to the people of what the various, the Catholics think in a certain way, the Orthodox in another, the Evangelicals in another. They each have their own take at the moment on what are these beings. But one thing that is rather shocking is the attitude of the Vatican, because the Vatican is the only one that is all-embracing. I mean, why do they have so much certainty? It's because of the story that I narrate in this book. After the first crash retrieval, there was, of course, Roswell, and the Vatican sent immediately one of the most eminent representatives at the time to Roswell. So the Vatican knew about Roswell, and then there were James Francis Cardinal McIntyre, who died in 1979. He was an archbishop here in Los Angeles. Was actually in Roswell. There were two sites, not one, by the way, and he went there, and then he went to talk about it with the Pope, who in the meantime had already given the UFO that they had recovered in northern Italy. That's when the reverse engineering project started. Then in the early 50s, they formalized it and made it into what eventually became known as the Legacy Program. Then what happened in the early 70s was that they started the remote viewing projects, both because they saw that in Soviet Union they were doing similar things with telekinesis and stuff. So they started, and as soon as they started in 1971, 72, in 1973 they came to the conclusion that non-human intelligence was interfering with their operations, and that the remote viewers were getting contact with actual aliens. At the beginning, it wasn't called Stargate Project. It would be eventually called Stargate Project only in 1991. And it was called Stargate Project once the whole alien thing took over the show of these remote viewers. People like Ingo Swann, various remote viewers like Pat Buchanan, those people that's, became a way for them to connect with these beings, just like the Russians were doing.
Wow.
In Russia, they connected through the work of Colonel Sabin. And then the Vatican, you see, that this whole disclosure that we are living today with Trump actually started at the end of the Obama presidency. It started when John Podesta made his famous post on Twitter claiming that he could have more regarding the disclosure. After that, he thought, fortunately we didn't have Hillary becoming president, but while he was chairman of the Hillary campaign, he went to Rome to talk with the Vatican about it, and to talk with this organization that was then connected to Russia. They talk about often about Trump and his links to Russia, but nobody talks about John Podesta and these people and their links to Russia, which were much more closer to something that, and this organization that they were creating in Russia that is now being put on pause because of the war in Ukraine. This organization that is actually directed in Moscow by Vladimir Putin wanted to become like the Bilderberg of the ufologists. But of course, after the war of Ukraine started to erupt, then they had to put everything on hold. But the Jesuits were involved, and my friend Roberto Pinotti was actually called, and he went 2 times in Moscow. And in Moscow, he actually saw the Vatican representatives there. I mean, I have photos here. So, and documents, so that people can see that we are talking about things that are not speculation. This is actually Roberto Pinotti with Lieutenant Colonel Sabin, the head of the remote viewers, who were working during the Setka program in Soviet Union. And in my book, I have also some very interesting testimonies about how there was similar things to what was going on here. And then, of course, you have also the Chinese who nowadays have one of the most advanced space programs, but only thanks to the Jesuits. Let's not forget the Jesuits were the ones who almost 500 years ago went to China and brought them astronomy, and they educated them on astronomy. So, of course, they became very important. Any questions?
Yeah, I mean, we're going all the way back to, Giordano
Bruno. Giordano Bruno was one of the most eminent astronomers.
1500, something crazy. So we're all the way back there.
Galileo time.
Back we go?
Yeah. there was, of course, the whole thing about heliocentric, like you said before, no? That was one of the main reasons. But then you had also Galileo Galilei, you had then later on Copernicus. I mean, the thing is that the church...
They were put in, house arrest.
No, but the crazy thing, if you think about it, today, the Jesuits are the ones who are actually getting you to embrace the extraterrestrial, wanting to be at the forefront of this disclosure and all that. Because one of the main people who sent Giordano Bruno on the stake, like I say in my book, was a Jesuit. So the Jesuits went from being the ones who silenced everybody to the ones who instead now are trying to, they are still silencing everybody, but they're directing now the narrative to a more open situation. In fact, Guy Consolmagno, who is currently the director of the foundation of the Vatican Observatory, he said that we should listen to what was said in the Peter's survey of 2008. Now, in my book, the fourth chapter is dedicated to these two surveys that were conducted, one in the middle of the 90s, financed by Robert Bigelow and conducted by the Alexanders. The other one is called the Peter's survey of 2008. These two surveys were basically made so to understand how the various different religious denominations of Christianity, but also Muslims, Jews, Buddhists, will react once disclosure is announced. And then they came with the official narrative. Of course, that is, I think, a little bit doubtful, because they said, oh, the Americans have, they had like 100 priests answering questions, a survey, just to see how they will all, the various pastors, how they will react, the various rabbis. And in the end, they came to the conclusion that, yes, the American people are mature enough to take it, no problem. I don't think so, because then you have a bunch of other people who are saying exactly the contrary, including Jacques Vallée. So it's kind of a little bit weird.
Yeah. Well, when I was in the CIA, there was a guy that was disclosing. He was on Carrie Cassidy. You've probably seen some of her stuff. She reveals a lot of stuff on the UFO stuff. But he came on. It was Bill Broadbreaker, and he was a former. He claimed to be, former SEAL. He was involved in programs that were, in Area 51. He worked with the Greys. He worked with this system that you could see the future on it. And I was like, I kind of validated the guy. And from that, my life turned upside down. They came after me to destroy my life. So the CIA still is, suppressing this. Now you say the Jesuits are like, oh yeah, it's like, we like the ET stuff now, and they're cool. But on the other hand, you got the CIA basically still trying to suppress this stuff.
Well, I think we're going towards something big, though, if you think about it, because now a lot of people say, but why now? Well, one of the main reasons is that a lot of things have happened since we have reverse engineered this technology. This technology is the technology that has brought us the AI, the data centers. We went from Project Stargate being a remote viewing program to Project Stargate being a data center program, and it's all connected. Wow. So now that we have the technology, we are basically fallen in their own trap, because they have built a digital prison around us, and they don't need to come with the UFOs like Independence Day, when they are basically owning the AI. Now, Avi Loeb, the guy who I told you is a major shield, he actually works for Shin Bet, for the Israel military intelligence, but he also acts like the scientist who knows it all, and now he's going to be in charge of the scientific committee on UAP. This guy said that if the aliens come on Earth, they will connect with our AI. Well, my thesis is they actually gave us these things, so we build the AI, and there's no need of connecting the AI because basically the AI is their product. So we are already screwed up because we bring an alien in our pocket every time we have a smartphone. Now, now you might think that that is not real, but actually it is real, and I tell you why. Because when we hear the history of how the AI developed and how the whole history, well, I mean, in the end, what we are having now is a product that is definitely changing our reality. Anthropic, for example, has been embraced like the good AI by the Vatican, who made the encyclicas. Wow, the encyclica, big thing. Or the Pope has embraced the AI, but the good AI. And then ChatGPT is the evil AI. And then they say that Anthropic will not be used for military. That's nonsense. They already said that every time there will be a special operation like Venezuela, they will be using Anthropic. So that's it. They are just selling us a lie regarding the good and bad AI, because there is no good and bad AI. There just is a one AI that is going to control everything by 2030. And in my book, well, I don't want to give out too much, but in the end, you will understand that from next year onwards, something really special is starting, and it's going to last 7 years. And in that alignment with Sirius, that's the moment in which they will take over the whole show.
Wow. So yeah, they have to have these alignments. They're all into that stuff.
There's a ritual that is going to take place, and it's going to last 7 years. A ritual takes 7 years, and it's going to take place in the heart of Africa.
Interesting. Yeah, you've given us some really good tidbits in this book, and yeah, definitely appreciate it. So what do you think the future is? We're going to be able to like avoid the UFO control system that they're trying to spring on us, or what?
Well, you see, it's about really a situation that they have devised for a very long time. So whereby by the time we are finally, disclosure is starting now. It's not going to be given to us in 1 year. It's going to probably take a few years. But
Right.
by the time they give us the full picture, the world will have already changed, and we will have been impossibilitated to react in any way against their interest. Because that is their problem. They want to maintain control over us. The governments know that once the alien disclosure happens, well, a lot of people will say, who cares about the president? Who cares? I mean, these guys, they're more powerful. So that is what they want to avoid. You understand? They want to avoid the fact that people might reject not only religion, because there will be people who will also be driven to think that these are the saviors of mankind, because that is also the false perception that the Jesuits want to bring us. You understand? So think about the fact that on one side you have people like J.D. Vance, who initially said they were demons. Yeah?
Right. I was going to ask that. Good. Thank you.
That is the topic that I opened the book with.
Right. Okay.
But then, once that this whole thing started and the disclosure is starting, even Vance had to kind of a little bit, because the demon, just when it was a couple of weeks ago, an exorcist who used to be an intelligence officer, Monsignor Rossetti, you heard about it, no? In the Archbishop of Washington, D.C., kicked him out as exorcist after 19 years. And because he said that the aliens were demons.
Right.
So the Orthodox, they continue to say the aliens are demons.
That's just disinformation. They're like just seeding disinformation. They've always been doing that, though.
Well, I mean, the thing is this. Of course, we can't expect that every single extraterrestrial, interdimensional being or extra-dimensional being is a positive being. There might actually be fallen angels. There might actually be demons. But of course, good and evil is reflected at a universal level. So if you have 4 races, there might be a race that is inclined to be more demonic and more evil than another one that is more angelic and more, even us humans, we are given the choice. We can go and become the monsters that at times we do become, or we can become some very good and positive beings, but it is up to us. We have been given this choice. Other races might not have that choice. They might go by the will of the single, like, the queen bee. So there is a lot of things that will change in the coming years. And for me, it was important by doing this book that people finally know who is controlling the whole thing, the narrative. That when you put on the TV, you don't simply become a passive spectator of what is the biggest change in human history and the biggest event. Because I have decided with this book to abandon my interest in politics. I'm all interested in exopolitics.
Awesome.
Do you think that it's relevant if this president or this other president does something when in reality there is something else that controls the whole agenda? I mean, think about it. Xi Jinping, Putin, Trump, they know already that we are not alone. They might each have, more information regarding a subject than the other, but in reality, they know. And that is what also, a lot of this at the top level of our society these days, they are actually moving, knowing about this great revolution that will occur with this disclosure. That's why a guy like Luis Elizondo has built a bunker. That's why Peter Thiel has constructed a secret society that is actually controlling and preparing for World War III, and at the same time Peter Thiel has moved the family to Buenos Aires and says, as soon as China or Russia does something, I am going to Buenos Aires, I'm going to Argentina, I don't want to stay here in America. So this is not really...
Not encouraging.
Not encouraging. Not encouraging. Absolutely.
Not at all. Wow. All right, Leo. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks for the information. Guys, get out and get that book. It's going to be, just like all of his books, it's going to be incredibly insightful and revelatory and take you to the next level in consciousness, I think.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. I mean, my intention is for you and everybody else to read this book, because I really feel that it's for us important to not be manipulated on this subject, that we have actually the freedom to decide where to go on this subject. If this is really, I mean, the fact that Steven Spielberg has sold us the gray aliens that for decades the abductees have referred to as being evil, as being good. And at one point, we even had a child play with E.T. Oh, wow, E.T., what a nice...
E.T. phone home.
E.T. phone home and the whole thing. And then you have Encounters of the Third Kind with everybody's deliberately, and these grays, they're all nice. And then, in the last movie, at the end of the movie, they are even bringing out of retirement E.T. on a wheelchair almost, because that's what it is. We have E.T. arriving in a wheelchair for the final disclosure. Now, disclosure could happen in 2 ways at this point: by the government giving us their own version, and of course, finally telling us that we are not alone and that we have aliens that are actually currently even in laboratories owned by the military industrial complex. Or we could have, and I hope that actually is the best solution, that finally one of these alien races manifests themselves, because then it's not anymore in the hands of the governments to control the narrative. Then it's our hands, just, once they are in front of us. But that is not possible, because a lot of these races have treaties of not intervention on the affairs of a primitive species like us. So that is unfortunate. But let's see what's going to happen. Thank you so much for having me on today. And the Vatican top secret alien agenda is something that we will be probably talking about for a long time. And also, once you read this book, I'm sure you're going to have a lot of other questions.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Leo. So
Take
always
care.
an honor. Thank you very much. And we'll see you guys next time.
God bless you all.
God bless.
Hello, Patriots. I'm at Restored Republic via a GCR update compiled by Judy Byington. The Obama family is a manufactured farce that was used by cabal-controlled CIA to destroy our nation from within, said John F. Kennedy on Telegram. Are Barack Obama's children even his? No, they're not actually. Or did he rent them from his campaign chairman? Chairman of the Obama Foundation, Martin Nesbitt, sure looks like Malia and Natasha Obama. He sits on the boards of directors of publicly traded companies like CenterPoint Energy, Norfolk Southern Railroad Corporation, and American Airlines Group. He was on the board of the Chicago Housing Authority, which I believe Big Mike was part of. Martin Nesbitt, close personal friend of Obama, and was also the campaign treasurer during Obama's 2008 presidential campaign. Imagine if a foreign Muslim asset infiltrated our highest level of government as president with his fake birth certificate and fake transgender wife, created a fake family to destroy our nation from within. Then Obama went after President Trump, and it was all done directly by the CIA and their media assets they own. A big mistake they're all about to realize. Judy note. Below is an article I wrote 3 years ago that points out the Obama, Biden, Clinton, Pelosi criminality that has yet to hit the national news, let alone be recognized by the general public. One would ask why was there little or no interest in the workings of the deep state globalists, since the purpose of the Obama administration appeared to be changing America from a democratic regime to socialist and communism. If it weren't for Trump, they would have made it. I purposefully left in the Article 14 references, even though most of which have since been erased from the internet, to show the censorship we still face today. Saturday, April 22nd, 2023, and then the link is Obama, Biden behind arming ISIS Benghazi, SEAL Team 6 massacres. Judy note. Speaking of censorship, for years I have almost daily posted articles and updates on the internet's largest news organization before its news. That is until last Monday. This has yet to correct the problem, and I haven't been able to post all week. This is the third time this has happened. You'd think I was publishing something the deep state didn't want you to know. EBS alert. Very soon, everyone worldwide will receive 7 emergency broadcast system text messages on their cell phones urging us to go home and stay for 10 days, though the EBS could last 3 to 6 weeks. Be prepared. During those 10 days, banks will close. The internet and ATMs will not work, and phones will only work for 911 calls. You can obtain a signal app from the military which will work your phone. On TVs and radios worldwide, the EBS will play 8-hour documentaries 3 times a day for 10 days. 10 days of communication darkness. After the 10 days of communication darkness, all phones, TVs, radios, and computers worldwide run on the secure Starlink satellite system. All peoples of the world will be called into redemption centers where we will receive NESARA payments, can exchange and redeem our currency in Zim, and set up secure bank accounts identified by our own body rhythms through the new quantum system. Banks will no longer have access to our monies. Possible timing. On Monday, March 2nd, President Trump signed Executive Order 14178, banning CBDC development and ordering a digital asset strategic reserve. Since Monday, June 1st, redemption centers in 14 cities have been staffed and operational. Military personnel were present at each location. NDAs would be required. On Tuesday, June 9th, the new gold asset-backed quantum financial system went full global through the Starlink satellite system. On Wednesday, June 10th, the old Cabal SWIFT system processed its last transaction. On Thursday, June 11th, 2026, at 4:47 a.m., the old banking SWIFT system died when JP Morgan executed its first live transaction through the XRP ledger. On Tuesday, June 16th, Congress passed a bill that prohibited the cabal from producing the fiat digital dollar because the new gold asset-backed currency was already in place across 209 nations. On Saturday, June 20th, 2026, bondholders in Tier 3 were expecting to be notified, exchange, and have access to their monies. Between Monday, June 22nd and Sunday, June 28th, Tier 4B notifications will be sent out. The first wave covered 1.2 million verified accounts. Saturday, July 4th, President Trump would announce the new gold standard currency. And remember, this is an event-driven war, so the dates are fluid. EBS blackout martial law lockdowns. Wednesday, June 17th, EBS activation. Quantum connected on Telegram. No time frames have been given for EBS activation. There have been many suspicions on time limits. Absolutely nothing has been set in stone about any of it. Absolutely no one knows, and it is designed that way for a reason. It will happen when it is time. When it happens, follow the EBS instructions to the letter. All we have been told by the operator who is dialed in: number 1, everyone will be home, and 2, it will happen at the top of the hour. The general consensus in decoder groups is to be ready for 3 to 6 weeks. Everything has already been factored in. You will be fine. Do not panic. Worldwide, we will receive 7 trumpets, aka EBS text messages on our phones, alerting us on what is happening and urging us to tune into our TVs and radios. We will be urged to go and stay at home for at least 10 days, though the EBS could last 3 to 6 weeks. Worldwide, on TVs and radios, the EBS will play 8-hour documentaries 3 times a day for 10 days, called 10 Days of Communication Darkness. Worldwide, the internet and ATMs will not work during the 10 days. Worldwide, phones will work for 911 calls, 911 calls, but we can obtain a signal app from the military, which will secure the phones for regular use through this new Starlink satellite system and quantum computer. The documentaries will cover topics of arrests, tribunals, fraud, corruption, pedophilia. After the 10 days of communication darkness, all phones, TVs, radio, and computers worldwide will be connected to the new quantum internet, run on the secure Starlink satellite system. All peoples of the world will be called into redemption centers where we will receive NESARA payments, can exchange and redeem our currency and ZIM, and set up secure bank accounts identified by our own body rhythms. Through the new quantum system, banks will no longer have access to our monies. Global currency reset. Judy note: from the below sources, it appeared we could anticipate Tier 4B, us, the internet group, being notified to set exchange appointments sometime between Monday, June 22nd and Sunday, June 28th. Wednesday, June 17th, Mark Z, a bondholder, was receiving his money on Thursday, June 18th. Other bondholders were expecting to have their money this weekend. All of Tier 3 were going to exchange this weekend. The U.S. Mint was putting out a $1 gold coin. The new gold standard will be announced by Trump on July 4th. At that time, gold was expected to be worth from $1,500 to $2,000 an ounce. Silver was expected to be worth from $1,200 to $1,500 an ounce. I would think gold would be a lot more than that, because right now, isn't it around $3,500 an ounce, or somewhere around there, $4,000, $3,500? But I guess we'll see. Silver that's a huge jump for silver, so that's good if you're collecting silver. Wednesday, June 17th, update. On June 11th, 2026 at 4:47 a.m., the old banking system died when JP Morgan executed its first live transaction through the XRP ledger, connected to Ondo Finance, connected to MasterCard, routed through ISO 20022 protocol. No press conference, no announcement. SWIFT processed its last independent transaction on June 10th. Since June 11th, every single cross-border settlement between the 47 participating institutions has been routed through the new ledger, not tested live. processing $4.2 billion per hour as you read this. Congress passed the CBDC prohibition clause on June 16th, buried inside a housing bill. No standard loan vote. No debate. They banned the government digital dollar permanently through 2030 because the people's system is already operational and they cannot compete with it. They did not ban CBDC because they don't want digital currency. They banned it because the replacement already exists and it's decentralized. Tier 4B notifications begin between June 22nd and June 28th. The first wave covers 1.2 million verified accounts. Since June 1st, redemption centers in 14 cities have been staffed and operational. Military personnel are present at each location. NDAs will be required. The exchange rates you've been told are not public yet, but the structure is locked, gold-backed, ASIC verified, quantum encrypted through Starshield satellite coverage that went full global on June 9th. The man who signed Executive Order 14178 on March 2nd, banning CBDC development and ordering a digital asset strategic reserve, did not do it for Wall Street. He did it for you, every patriot who held, every person who was called crazy, every family that believed when the world laughed. Israel will be last. Wednesday, June 17th, President Trump just dunked on Israel for committing war crimes against civilians. So the tide is turning now. He's beginning to turn against Israel. I knew this was coming eventually. So that's a good thing. We're getting closer. Israel has been fighting Hezbollah too long and too many people are being killed, and you don't have to knock down an apartment house every time you're looking for somebody, because there are a lot of people in those apartment houses and they're not all Hezbollah. That can tell you. And I suggested to Israel to let Syria take care of Hezbollah, because to be honest with you, I think they do a better job of doing it. Mr. Poole on Telegram. And according to Charlie Ward, Hezbollah is paid for and sponsored by Israel, and that's their excuse to go in, and it's a land grab. A Lebanon land grab is what he said. And I'm not surprised. So I think there's a lot of secrets that are held about Israel we're going to find out that are not good. Wednesday, June 17th, breaking. Benjamin Netanyahu says he will not comply with President Trump's peace deal with Iran and will strike Iran and Lebanon whenever he deems necessary. Pompous ass. I'm sorry. Netanyahu says he does not see eye to eye with Trump on the issue and that he is responsible for Israel's security. Netanyahu needs to be removed. EBS Live on Telegram. He's a walking ego. Probably a clone. I don't think that's the original Netanyahu. AI mind control. Wednesday, June 17, 2026. French intelligence agency drops Palantir AI tech over U.S. dependency and spying fears. The Gateway Pundit by Paul Sarin.
Now, the Satanists are spouting out more lies than I can remember seeing. Let's start with this so-called SpaceX initial public offering that supposedly turned Elon Musk into the world's first trillionaire. It's valued at more than 100 times their sales, most of which come, or a large portion of which comes from the U.S. government. And basically, if you look at the details, they say, well, we're going to have power centers in space, and we're going to colonize Mars, and we're going to have 1 million humanoid robots. And remember, this company had to use actors dressed as robots because they don't actually have any robots. And somehow they're supposed to be worth more than, all the real companies around the world, like Toyota, that actually make cars. It's nonsense. It's a giant hallucination. And there's so much fakery that it's hard to know where to begin, but I know it's not going to last longer. The other thing that's crossed my radar is very important is all these AI data centers are some kind of huge fraud. Watch this clip of this guy who actually runs data centers.
My name is Doug Seavey. I live at 3392 64th Street, Palo, Iowa. I've called the mayor and suggested that I get put on some kind of a committee because I'm Palo's resident expert. I build data centers. I own data centers. I built the first private data center in the state of Iowa, and everything that Google is telling you is BS. I have a data center right now that's running in Hiawatha, and I have been there 14 years and have never used 1 gallon of water. What Google isn't telling you is they don't want to use the technology because it costs more. They're going to burn through the water, and when it's done, and they don't care. Then they'll put the money in. And so I can guarantee you, if you guys want to start a committee, I'll volunteer because I'm the expert. I build them. I'm working on one right now. I'm working on one in Milwaukee. I live here, and if I told you on the phone, I called you and talked to you, and I said, you should really let me help you. I never heard anything back. And I warned you. I said, my well goes dry. I'm coming after you because I know what's going on. And you can't do this. You guys have to say no water. They don't have to have it. I mean, to give you an idea, you people, how many people in here have heard of Unity Point Health? Okay? All right? I have 100% of their IT in my data center, and I've never used a gallon of water. And I'm the most efficient data center in the world. So this is all crap, and you guys don't want to listen. In fact, I called you and said, maybe we should talk. Never heard back from you. So if you guys want to put a committee together, you can call me. I'll tell you the truth, and I can explain everything to you how this works, because they're lying to you. Big time. There's absolutely no reason to use a gallon of water. And the same thing on the efficiency of the electricity. They're doing the cheapest way they can. All they want to do is get the gravy, and when it turns to shit, they're gone. Google is not our friend. So anybody wants to talk to me, I'll sit over here afterwards, and I'll explain it to you. So if you would like, I would be more than happy to be on your committee to work on this, because I am the expert. I build them. I know.
So in other words, they're grabbing huge amounts of energy and stealing water from around the country for something that has nothing to do with data centers. And my belief is that the Khazarian mafia, the Satanists, are trying to create some kind of artificial intelligence god that will power robots to kill us. I know that sounds crazy, but the magazine New Scientist has just reported that they deployed autonomous drones in Ukraine, and they don't distinguish between, they see. And this is already being deployed. And we got to remember, the Ukraine is a crime organization. It's not a country. The Russian government spokesman and others have put out tons of proof that it's a center for... So how much longer is this going to last? We're all wondering. How much longer can we put up with this stuff? Here's one more lie that I want to put out. Take a look at this other clip of Trump talking about Iran. The whole story about the war in the Middle East and the closing of the Straits of Hormuz and all that, it's almost entirely fake. The reality is that Israel has suffered the greatest military defeat in its history, and it's not going to last much longer. He is saying that dozens of Israel's top generals and their main command headquarters was destroyed. This is supposed to be the safest And there was another clip I wanted to show you. It was sent to me by the T3 Freemasons, but it's apparently been deleted from the internet because it's no longer available at the link I had. But it shows Colonel Douglas McGregor saying that Iran just destroyed 400 Israeli tanks with missiles. That means that the Israeli leadership, military leadership, has been destroyed, and their main ground force, their whole doctrine, which relied on tanks, is over. So Israel's not going to last much longer, and that means that the next step will be to arrest the entire, or 90% or more of the U.S. Congress. Actually, it's probably about 98%, as well as a lot of the U.S. government leadership. Now, is it going to happen? Well, we need to go after the people who are behind the puppets we see on our screens, and there are signs that this is happening. The UK Defence Minister has just resigned, and that's a good sign that the military is going to make its move against the blackmailed pedophile Keir Starmer and the fake King Charles. So that's a big move that we're seeing. Now, we also saw that the Chief of Staff of J.D. Vance, who's just an actor, has resigned, and that's another big move. And there was also some kind of lockdown in the Pentagon where supposedly poison gas or something was the excuse, but the lockdown occurred in the administrative offices. So, it is a sign. I was told by U.S. military intelligence that there was going to be some kind of military move against the fake government by the end of this month, June, and this lockdown is a sign that it could be happening. But for sure, the entire horror show that is the U.S. government has become cannot last much longer. It's amazing that it has lasted this long, but they are so hated now in the world that it cannot be much longer. For example, now only 1 out of 10 Europeans view the U.S. as an ally. So the U.S. is totally isolated. Every other country on earth also despises the U.S. under their fake regime they now have. And of course, Israel is finished, and 61% of Israelis now say they don't want Netanyahu to run for leadership. Now, of course, we know that Netanyahu was killed in an Iranian bombing, and it's just an avatar, same with Trump. But the important thing is it's the organization behind them. It's the Chabad, Lubavitch, the people who try to stay behind the scenes and use front man like Larry Fink. We have to go after them. Gold bounties have been put out on them, and this is real. Here's an example of how real this is. Take a look at this latest Indiana Jones-style clip from Iran where they found another 200 tons of gold. So, they've just discovered about 1,000 tons of gold just recently, and that means that the Dragon family offer for gold, and it needs to be acted upon because they are destroying the West, and the West needs to get its act together. I don't want this to be a one China world, and I don't think China is necessarily a force for good. For example, I've just been informed by some Japanese sources that the Chinese have deployed a huge illegal fishing fleet that has wiped out 70% of the world's squid population, and they're hunting species that are protected, like whale sharks. And we need to have some kind of global common rules to prevent the destruction of the environment. But and if we just leave China without any checks and balances, that's not going to happen. I know that they're doing a lot for the environment inside China, but they're also raping the world's seas and doing other things. And that's why the West needs to get its act together, and that means taking away control of the magic money machine from these people. We have to go after their control of the hallucination they call money, which is going through the stock market. The AI boom is a case in point. There's no real market demand for all this investment. These trillions of dollars they're going to try to generate through IPOs does not have any business model that will pay for it. They're already cutting prices. Banks are refusing to loan to places like SoftBank based on their AI investments. And I've seen many big bubbles pop, and this one for sure is at the popping stage at this point. I think that people look back at this SpaceX IPO as like the end of an era, and even if they try to distribute some money to the people through, welders that work for SpaceX or something, that's not the kind of financial system we want to have. We want to have the financial system, which is the process of deciding what we as a species do in the future, in the hands of people who will represent the people. In other words, we need to have the financial system working for the people, not for a tiny group of Satan-worshipping oligarchs. And the military need to be more proactive in doing this. I know that they've set up an investigation into the incredibly corrupt Trump administration, but we don't need a committee. What we need to send special forces into Mar-a-Lago and all the other places these people hang out, and Congress, and just round them up. Enough is enough. The Epstein files have made it clear that, I keep urging my military contacts to do something. They say they're working on it, and there are signs it's happening, but we all need to keep pushing, and it's going to be from the bottom up before we can finally remove these scum from power. But even though it does look pretty grim in the West, the rest of the world has already thrown them off. They've been kicked out of Turkey, and Iran, and China and Russia and North Korea has kicked them out. And now India is actually preparing to use nuclear weapons to defend itself from the United States, because the rogue regime there has been trying to cut off India's supply of oil by illegally targeting their oil tankers. And that's how bad the situation is. When we have, the world's #1 sponsor of terrorism is the United States government, and it's also the world center for all sorts of organized crime. And it is a criminal deep state. It's so obvious now with all the corruption surrounding the Trump family, the insider trading. Why hasn't the military already sent special forces in and grabbed these bastards? What is preventing them from doing it? And I'll say this, it's probably because most of the generals are compromised. I mean, it's going to be the colonels and the captains who are going to have to take action, as well as the military police. And they have to go up the ranks, and as soon as they identify someone who's trying to prevent them from arresting the imposter who replaced your Commander-in-Chief, Donald J. Trump, who hasn't been seen since June 2025, then they are a traitor. You must arrest them. Enough is enough. Hopefully it'll, we'll see some action at the end of the month as they promised, but we're going to have to just, all of us, keep fighting until this finally ends. But internationally, it's already game over. It's really just down to the U.S. and Israel at this point, and the few families who control the Fortune 500 companies. We're talking about maybe at the maximum of 300 individuals who have to be rounded up. And I'll keep urging all my contacts to do something about it. Hopefully this will not last much longer. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself today. Now I'd like to answer questions from readers and viewers.
Ivan, we have our first comment to respond to today. It says, Dear Benjamin, Magmar is the new globalist leader of Hungary. He is not to be trusted. The Pope of the Vatican is not to be trusted either. The great Pope, Pope Orsini, and the rest of the Orsini family are not to be trusted as well. No one in the British royal family are to be trusted, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, the British royal family under Queen Elizabeth, and they have been, fighting to protect the environment. However, after Queen Elizabeth died, she was replaced by a fake King Charles controlled by the Satanists, and this was, there's all sorts of evidence for this. So there is a problem now with the British royals. As far as Hungary is concerned, I'm going to sit on the fence on that one. I think the Habsburgs, who are in control Hungary and Spain, have been visibly moving against Israel, and they are also trying to stop the crime in the Ukraine. So I'm going to give them a bit more leeway. In my view, they're not the source of evil. but I do think there are a lot of bad people in Russia with the fake Putin, and there's a lot of chabad there. So I would worry more about that. Now, as far as the Pope and the Orsinis are concerned, you have to. I've been listening to the Pope speaking on a trip in Spain, and he was saying that they had to do something about the child abuse by the clergy, and at least he's saying the right stuff. But of course, the fact that the Vatican Bank still hasn't pulled the plug on people like Elon Musk shows that, yeah, there's something fundamentally wrong there too. But, you know, I'm not going to say all the elite are evil. I think we're dealing with a satanic clique within the elite, and we have to focus on them. And that means going after the obvious targets, like the people behind the fake Trump and the other, you know, known terrorists like Zelensky and Howard Lutnick. These are the people we have to go after. Once we go after the visible ones, like Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, then we can unmask the hidden controllers and deal with them. Next question.
Hi, Ben. Interesting news recently. Xi Jinping met the leader yesterday of Laos. Unlike what you had previously said during your video, it seems as though he is still active. What do you believe is currently going on with this?
Well, what I was told was that Xi Jinping was out of public view from May 25th until early this week when he went to North Korea. And the reason was because a major purge was taking place in China, including Politburo members. And this was the result of, information gathering that took place when the fake Donald Trump and the whole U.S. criminal government visited China. They were able to monitor their entire network in China, and that's what the purge was about. So I understand, and China has changed. They've ripped out all those 700 million face recognition cameras and put them in the trash. And I know there was a meeting of the secret societies and that they've united now. And I believe they're going to move the UN headquarters to Laos. But I do talk to the Chinese, and clearly something fundamental has changed there behind the scenes. And the first thing we need to see is how much longer the regime in South Korea lasts. Then we're going to see if we have regime change in Japan. Then you'll know it's really game over in East Asia. Next question.
Hi, Ben. How do you currently feel about the longevity of Taiwan in regards to its relationship with China? Do you believe that it will continue to exist as a separate entity, or do you believe at some point it will be consumed by China? There seems, although that many people believe that they are the same country, that there's still some form of divide. What are your thoughts on this?
The Chinese royal families sort of moved to Taiwan after World War II, and they control a lot of the finances behind the scenes of both China and Taiwan. But my understanding was that Taiwan used to have their own separate secret society with about 8 million members, including many around throughout China, but that this is now merged with the Hongmen, and there's this that underneath the scenes, China has now unified already. But for various reasons, for example, Taiwan was the heir to the Kuomintang government that won World War II against Japan, and they were the Kuomintang were put in charge of Japan after World War II, and then when they fled to Taiwan, they still kept their control over Japan. So the reason why on the surface Taiwan is still a separate country is because the whole issue of Japan still has to be dealt with, and that is happening. There's stuff going on with the Japanese royal family and with the North Koreans and with the Asian underworld that is going to cause very visible changes. I won't say when, but it's happening and not too far in the future. Next question.
Hi, Ben. There's been a lot going on in the world this week. Would like to hear your thoughts on the Belfast riots and what's going on there right now.
Well, There is clearly a huge groundswell of anger in Europe at the influx of military-age, non-European men who have led to huge increases in rapes and other crimes, and the fact that the authorities have been not taking appropriate action means that the people have decided to take action on their own. And my advice is that the police forces and military of Western Europe should round up all these military-aged men who are not in productive jobs and deport them ASAP. Next question.
I bet we have our last question for today to end it out. With everything that's been occurring lately, where do you actually see this going? To me, it feels very much like it's just too much to keep track of. And do you believe what we are in what's considered to be the end times?
I think we are seeing the end of Western civilization as it has previously existed, and that the whole several thousand-year-old monotheistic project to create a single world leader is collapsing. And in that sense, you could think of it as end times. But I think that what's going to happen is it's going to be like the planet Earth giving birth. It's going to be like a Cambrian explosion, which is all over. In other words, it'll be a very wonderful, wonderful time. Once this final infection is removed, then we're going to see exponential expansion of life, human life, animal life, plant life. There's going to be incredible things happening. And it'll happen as soon as we remove the people who have been trying to kill us and prevent humanity from reaching its full potential, and that day is soon. So I'm optimistic, but right now things look bad because we're watching the end of an empire, and it's always not, a painful phase to go through before the new birth can begin. But I guarantee you, the good guys are winning, and the planet Earth is going to be turned into heaven on earth. And I believe we'll all be able to live for thousands of years. That day is going to come soon. The technology is already there. All we need to do is remove control of the financial system from the Satanists, and this technology can be made available for all of us who want it. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself this week, and I hope to see you again next week.
Restored Republic via GCR update. Judy note, it's amazing what the mainstream media fails to cover, or even care about. For 4 long, shameful years, America was not ruled by its elected president. Joe Biden, barely conscious, barely coherent, was a medical mannequin dressed in suits, wheeled out for staged events and media soundbites. But behind the curtains, a covert committee, led by Barack Obama, alongside a cadre of unelected handlers, was issuing the real orders. This was not incompetence. This was treason. Biden wasn't president. He was a placeholder in a hostile occupation. Senior intelligence source, 2025 Wednesday, June 17, 2026, massive breaking scandal, Obama's shadow coup, secret committee ran the U.S. while Biden was nearly brain-dead. According to President Trump, the entire point of the war in Iran was to neutralize the Iranian threat to the world, hold the deep state traitors accountable for the rogue nuclear weapons created by the Obama administration, and retrieve/test the uranium to prove it came from uranium-1, which Obama and Clinton freely supplied to the Iranian nation that hated America. Did that truth come out in the mainstream media? No more than the truth was being told about Obama and his role in trying to destroy America. But then, Obama was fake from the beginning. The Obama family is a manufactured farce that was used by cabal-controlled CIA to destroy our nation from within, said John F. Kennedy on Telegram. Are Barack Obama's children even his, or did he rent them from his campaign chairman? Chairman of the Obama Foundation, Martin Nesbitt, sure looks like Malia and Natasha Obama. He sits on the boards of directors of publicly traded companies like Centerpoint Energy, Norfolk Southern Railroad Corporation, and American Airlines Group. He was on the board of the Chicago Housing Authority, which I believe Big Mike was part of. Martin Nesbitt, close personal friend of Obama and was also the campaign treasurer during Obama's 2008 presidential campaign. Imagine if a foreign Muslim asset infiltrated our highest level of government as president with his fake birth certificate and fake transgender wife, created a fake family to destroy our nation from within. Then Obama went after President Trump. And it was all done directly by the CIA and their media assets they own. A big mistake they're all about to realize. Judy note, below is an article I wrote 3 years ago that points out the Obama/Biden/Clinton/Pelosi criminality, that has yet to hit the national news, let alone be recognized by the general public. One would ask why was there little or no interest in the workings of the deep state globalists? Since the purpose of the Obama administration appeared to be changing America from a democratic regime to socialist and communism. If it weren't for Trump they would have made it. President Obama, Vice President Joe Biden and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton were also said to have used the CIA to mastermind the SEAL Team 6 and Benghazi massacres, a presumed fake killing of bin Laden, plus laundered through Iran $1.5 billion U.S. taxpayer dollars that went to terrorists. It was all said to have started sometime in 2011 when the then U.S. President Barack Obama ordered his CIA Director John Brennan to ask Iran, which had been harboring bin Laden, to set him up in Pakistan in order for Obama to get a photo trophy to help with his re-election. Bin Laden, or a body double, went down May 1 of 2011 and SEAL Team 6 about 3 months later. Iran, who had been harboring bin Laden, was asked by Brennan to set bin Laden up in Pakistan for Obama to get a photo trophy to help with re-election. Then, Iran extorted the Obama administration for $1.52 billion to keep the secret. It was paid in cash. On May 24, 2011, the Obama/Biden administration leaked operational details in which operational forces were involved in taking out bin Laden. Then, on August 5, 2011, 33 individuals, including 22 SEALs with knowledge of the bin Laden scandal, were sent on a slow, heavy Chinook helicopter to a village in Afghanistan where they were shot down like a sitting duck. A Stinger missile found in wreckage was traced back to the CIA. Benghazi happened on September 11, 2012. It was a cover for running guns and missiles to various terrorist groups. Biden's, Obama's, Clinton's and the CIA's SEAL Team 6 and Benghazi massacres. Another great deception of Obama happened on 2 Jan. 2013 when he signed into law H.R. 4310, making it actually legal to use propaganda on the American people. Obama then used it to spy on his political enemies, specifically Donald Trump. Noted Trump attorney Sidney Powell said the Dominion software company was implicated in flipping votes from Trump to Biden, or from Republicans to Democrats in other races on the ballot. Pelosi's chief of staff was a key executive of Dominion Software and Senator Feinstein's husband, Richard Bloom, was a shareholder. Robert Mueller FBI's provided the computers for the hammer. Back in 2019, House Intelligence Committee ranking member Devin Nunes announced that he would file at least 8 federal indictments for misconduct during the FISA report. The count was expected to go up to 30 people charged, including some in the mainstream media. The charges were thought to expose a coup to overturn the 2016 election and appeared to involve former U.S. President Barack Obama, former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff and Democratic Congressman Cory Booker and Richard Blumenthal. The computer programs have come out as a result of 9/11 for the purpose of watching our enemies. They were later adopted to the voting business to be used in foreign countries, though the CIA has recently used them to spy on U.S. citizens. The powers that be tried to blackmail and leverage Montgomery to a point where he became a whistleblower. By the 2016 election, the alliance knew enough about Hammer/Scoreboard to step in and interfere enough so that Trump votes stayed with Trump as he was elected. That was why Clinton was so surprised she didn't win. In 2017, 3-star General Thomas McInerney and Dennis Montgomery blew the whistle on how the CIA was using the NSA hammer for the Russian hoax on President Trump. The CIA, Obama and Biden were suspected of also using Hammer/Scoreboard software to spy on SCOTUS judges Roberts and Scalia, FISA court judges, members of Congress, Flynn, Giuliani, Trump and Trump's family. Obama worked with the Chinese Communist Party to interfere with the 2020 presidential election. On Monday, 18 Jan. 2021, the Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe dropped a bombshell report on Congress alleging that China had interfered in 2020 election, in collusion with members of the Democrat Party led by Obama. The document also reported that the Pentagon had intercepted a message from the Chinese Communist Party that showed a plan to assassinate Pentagon generals. The letter, written by DNI Ratcliffe, was labeled Views on Intelligence Community Election Security Analysis, Intelligence Community Assessment, Foreign Threats to the 2020 U.S. Elections. George Soros had funded a mass media campaign for the Biden camp to the tune of $34 billion. Soros's, and apparently the Dems and Chinese Communist Party's purposes, appeared to be to steal the election from Trump in order to install communism and destroy America. EBS alert. Very soon everyone worldwide will receive 7 Emergency Broadcast System, EBS, text messages on their cell phones, urging us to go home and stay for 10 days, though the EBS could last 3 to 6 weeks. Be prepared. During those 10 days banks will close, the internet and ATMs will not work and phones will only work for 911 calls. You can obtain a signal app from the military which will work your phone. On TVs and radios worldwide, the EBS will play 8-hour documentaries 3 times a day for 10 days, 10 days of communication darkness. After the 10 days of communication darkness, all phones, TVs, radios and computers worldwide will be connected to the new quantum internet run on the secure Starlink satellite system. All peoples of the world will be called into redemption centers where we will receive NESARA/JAZARA payments, can exchange and redeem our currency in ZIM and set up secure bank accounts, identified by our own body rhythms, through the new quantum system. Banks will no longer have access to our monies. What we thought we knew, but didn't really know and now are supposed to know but don't have a clue. With clones, doubles, made-up movies Hollywood style and Trump's military alliance throwing more popcorn at us, it gets so confusing. See possible timing. On Monday 2nd of March President Trump signed Executive Order 14,178, banning CBDC development and ordering a digital asset strategic reserve. Since Monday 1st of June redemption centers in 14 cities have been staffed and operational. Military personnel were present at each location. NDAs would be required. On Tuesday, June 9, 2026 the new gold/asset-backed quantum financial system went full global through the Starlink satellite system. On Wednesday, June 10, 2026 the old Cabal SWIFT system processed its last transaction. On Thursday, June 11, 2026 at 4:47 a.m. EST the old banking SWIFT system died when JP Morgan executed its first live transaction through the XRP ledger. On Tuesday, June 16, 2026 Congress passed a bill that prohibited the cabal from producing the fiat digital dollar, because the new gold/asset-backed currency was already in place across 209 nations. On Saturday, June 20, 2026 bondholders and Tier 3 were expecting to be notified, exchange and have access to their monies. Between Monday 22nd of June and Sunday 28th of June Tier 4B, US, the Internet Group, notifications will be sent out. The first wave covered 1.2 million verified accounts. On Saturday, July 4, 2026 President Trump would announce the new gold standard currency. EBS, blackout, martial law, lockdowns, Wednesday, June 17, 2026 EBS activation, quantum connected on Telegram. No time frames have been given for EBS activation. There have been many suspicions on time limits. Absolutely nothing has been set in stone about any of it. Absolutely no one knows, and it is designed that way for a reason. It will happen when it is time. When it happens, follow the EBS instructions to the letter. All we have been told by the operator who is dialed in: 1. Everyone will be home. 2. It will happen at the top of the hour. The general consensus in decoder groups is to be ready for 3 to 6 weeks. Everything has already been factored in. You'll be fine. Do not panic. Worldwide we will receive 7 trumpets, aka EBS text messages, on our phones alerting us on what is happening and urging us to tune into our TV and radios. We will be urged to go and stay at home for at least 10 days, though the EBS could last 3 to 6 weeks. Worldwide on TVs and radios the EBS will play 8-hour documentaries 3 times a day for 10 days, called 10 Days of Communication Darkness. Worldwide the internet and ATMs will not work during the 10 days. Worldwide phones will only work for 911 calls, but we can obtain a signal app from the military which will secure the phones for regular use through the new Starlink satellite system and quantum computer. The documentaries will cover topics of arrests, tribunals, fraud, corruption, pedophilia. After the 10 days of communication darkness, all phones, TVs, radios and computers worldwide will be connected to the new quantum internet run on the secure Starlink satellite system. All peoples of the world will be called into redemption centers where we will receive NESARA/JAZARA payments, can exchange and redeem our currency in ZIM and set up secure bank accounts, identified by our own body rhythms, through the new quantum system. Banks will no longer have access to our monies. Global currency reset. Judy note, from the below sources it appeared we could anticipate Tier 4B, us, the Internet Group, being notified to set exchange appointments sometime between Monday 22 June 22 and Sunday 28 of June. Wednesday June 17, 2026 marks, a bondholder was receiving his money on Thursday 18 of June. Other bondholders were expecting to have their money this weekend. All of Tier 3 were going to exchange this weekend. The U.S. Mint was putting out a $1 gold coin. The new gold standard will be announced by Trump on July 4. At that time gold was expected to be worth from $1,500 to $2,000 an ounce. Silver was expected to be worth from $1,200 to $1,500 an ounce. Wednesday, June 17, 2026 update. On June 11, 2026 at 4:47 a.m. EST the old banking system died when JP Morgan executed its first live transaction through the XRP ledger. Connected to Ondo Finance. Connected to MasterCard. Routed through ISO 20022 protocol. No press conference. No announcement. SWIFT processed its last independent transaction on June 10. Since June 11, every single cross-border settlement between the 47 participating institutions has been routed through the new ledger. Not tested. Live. Processing $4.2 billion per hour as you read this. Congress passed the CBDC prohibition clause on June 16. Buried inside a housing bill. No standard loan vote. No debate. They banned the government digital dollar permanently through 2030, because the people's system is already operational and they cannot compete with it. They didn't ban CBDC because they don't want digital currency. They banned it because the replacement already exists and it's decentralized. Tier 4B notifications begin between June 22 and June 28. The first wave covers 1.2 million verified accounts. Since June 1, redemption centers in 14 cities have been staffed and operational. Military personnel are present at each location. NDAs will be required. The exchange rates you've been told are not public yet. But the structure is locked. Gold-backed. Asset verified. Quantum encrypted through Starshield satellite coverage that went full global on June 9. The man who signed Executive Order 14,178 on March 2, banning CBDC development and ordering a digital asset strategic reserve, did not do it for Wall Street. He did it for you. Every patriot who held. Every person who was called crazy. Every family that believed when the world laughed. Israel will be last. Wednesday, June 17, 2026 President Trump just dunked on Israel for committing war crimes against civilians. Israel has been fighting Hezbollah too long and too many people are being killed. And you don't have to knock down an apartment house every time you're looking for somebody, because there are a lot of people in those apartment houses, and they're not all Hezbollah that can tell you. And I suggested to Israel to let Syria take care of Hezbollah, because to be honest with you, I think they do a better job of doing it. Mr. Poole on Telegram. Wednesday, June 17, 2026 breaking, Benjamin Netanyahu says he will not comply with President Trump's peace deal with Iran and will strike Iran and Lebanon whenever he deems necessary. Netanyahu says he does not see eye to eye with Trump on the issue and that he is responsible for Israel's security. Netanyahu needs to be removed. EBS live on Telegram. AI mind control. Wednesday, June 17, 2026. French intelligence agency drops Palantir AI tech over U.S. dependency and spying fears. The Gateway pundit by Paul Sarin. Restored Republic via GCR. Judy note. Trump and his global military alliance have been working very hard to restore freedom to the people. Twos. June 16, 2026, Space Force, The Fall of Corporation America, 50 U.S.C. 1550, Executive Order 13818, John F. Kennedy, The Final Judgment Begins. On Monday 15, 2026 evening Trump signed two very important executive orders. The privately owned by Satan-worshipping bankers agency was now forever barred from tax collection and precluded from examining or prosecuting U.S. citizens to collect their taxpayer monies. The other executive order Trump signed Monday evening opened Federal Reserve payments to digital assets and non-bank institutions without a banking license, a banking-less system. Some time back Trump had taken over ownership of the privately owned by Satan-worshipping bankers Federal Reserve and transferred our taxpayer monies to the new U.S. Treasury under ownership of the people. Why were these EOs necessary? They made our gold/asset-backed monetary system, which had been functioning under the deep state cabal on fiat currency, valid, binding and legal. The national financial system was already under the gold/asset-backed global quantum financial system, which went live on May 8, 2026 in 209 countries. On Tuesday, June 16, 2026, JAG announced that former IRS Director Lois Lerner has been convicted by a military tribunal on charges including treason and fraud. Prosecutors alleged she used the IRS to target conservative groups and activists, causing widespread financial harm. After hours of testimony and evidence presentations, the tribunal returned a guilty verdict and reportedly recommended execution by hanging, Project Odin martial law on Telegram. It was now just a matter of time for those who had suffered under the deep state fiat system to receive their freedom and just rights. One of many was the case of Ken Cromar, who presently sat in the Florence prison, having been found guilty of living in his own fully owned home and after proving in a federal tax court that he owed no monies to the IRS. Despite the ruling in Cromar's favor, the IRS sold his home at auction and threw away all his possessions including expensive camera equipment he used to make a living. Ken recently wrote from prison, "I'm learning to be more forgiving of the Supreme Court who denied hearing my case. We know we're right, and believe our cause of exposing the IRS will ultimately prevail." Janine's appointed public defender Jack Blakely has ignored all of Janine's phone calls and has let her sit in jail and not responded to her calls, nor visited her even one time. Important, this Thursday, June 18 at 8 a.m. Judge Stephanie Williams is having a non-oral hearing about Janine's case, more judicial corruption, non-oral, aside from the lie stating that Janine was seen by her June 2. This never occurred. All Janine's rights have been violated by this court by this sheriff's department. We need someone to do the following, but please know that the Guernsey County Court of Common Pleas is even more corrupt and is responsible for what started this all in 2019. Judge Patton and Judge Bennett are both severely corrupt and involved. To report someone being held unlawfully or without legal cause in Southern Ohio, you should immediately petition for a writ of habeas corpus through the local court system and report the unlawful detention to the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation or federal authorities. 1. Reporting an unlawful jailing in Ohio involves taking both immediate legal action and administrative steps. 1. File a petition for a writ of habeas corpus, immediate release. A writ of habeas corpus is the primary legal mechanism to force an agency to justify why an individual is incarcerated. 1. Where to file? You can file this petition in the Court of Common Pleas in the county where the person is currently being held, the District Court of Appeals, or the Supreme Court of Ohio. 1. 2. Action: review the Ohio Public Defender habeas petition packet for the exact forms and instructions required to challenge unlawful imprisonment pro se. 1. 2. Report civil rights violations, if the unlawful detention involves an abuse of power, misconduct by law enforcement, or a violation of constitutional rights. 1. Federal level, submit an online report directly to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division or your local FBI field office. State level, file a public corruption or law enforcement misconduct tip with the Ohio Attorney General's Bureau of Criminal Investigation. 1, 2, 3. Report agency misconduct, if the unlawful jailing is the result of abuse, misconduct, or wrongful acts by specific jail staff, corrections officers, or police. File a formal grievance or contact the Internal Affairs Division of the specific detaining agency, for example, the local county sheriff's office or local police department. 1, 2. C. What we thought we knew, but didn't really know and now are supposed to know but don't have a clue. With clones, doubles, made-up movies Hollywood style and Trump's military alliance throwing more popcorn at us, it gets so confusing. 2s. June 16, 2026, the MH370 cover-up exposed, underground bases, U.S. Space Force surveillance and Trump's war on the hidden cabal. 2s. June 16, 2026, Muslims went crazy after Secretary of State Marco Rubio said this: "Radical Islam doesn't want just a small caliphate in Iraq or Syria. They see the United States as the greatest evil on earth and seek to dominate the entire West." Radical Islam is revolutionary, it wants endless expansion, terrorism, assassinations, and total control. They hate America, Europe, Israel, and every Muslim nation that partners with us. Orlando, Pensacola, and domestic attacks prove it. Radical Islam is a clear and imminent threat to the world. F2s. June 16, 2026. Attention, he signed last night, while you were sleeping, 2 executive orders. One killed the IRS. The other opened the Federal Reserve payment to digital non-banking, Tier 4B ISO 2022. Christian B. Wallace on Telegram. One kills the IRS. Always. DOJ language, forever barred and precluded from examining or prosecuting. That's not a pause. That's a death certificate. The other is opening the Federal Reserve payment rail to digital assets and non-bank institution, without a banking license. Read that one more time. He just opened the door for a banking-less system. Why would you kill the IRS unless the collection system has already been replaced? QFS went live May 8, 2026 in 209 countries. Running alongside SWIFT since midnight. Each sovereign citizen is being provided with a quantum ledger linked to their birth certificate bond. The value they stole from you the day you were born. Since 1933, your birth certificate has been collateral. Your social security number is a bond tracking number. Every American is worth $100,000 to $450,000 in stolen compound interest, illegal debt and confiscated labor value. NESARA Article 21, Debt Nullification, is computing now. All mortgages, all of them student loans. All credit cards. As you read this, every medical bill charged with unlawful compound interest since 1971 is being calculated and encoded into your QFS ledger. The gold is at Fort Knox. 147.3 million ounce, but the audit team that entered March 14 under Executive Order 14,271 found more. Gold repatriated from the Vatican Bank, from the Bank of England. From Basel. Not in any public ledger, anywhere. Ref, Knox Audit 2026-0314 Sigma. Total value, not $692 billion. $43 trillion. That is the gold behind your new money. I want to see the gold. Trump said he wants to get you to ask why. The answer, the gold is there, and $43 trillion more, and it is yours. Tier 4B notifications began 96 hours ago. Redemption centers were set up at 800 locations. Waiting for one sign, Trump walks into Fort Knox on camera and opens the 20-ton door. He opens it, the EBS goes off. QFS gets locked by EBS flames. The QFS locks your debt disappears. When your debt is gone, you are free. They kept you a slave for 53 years. Every dollar you owed was a lie. Every interest payment was theft. The guy who said they steal a lot is about to prove it on live TV. The door opens one time. G2s. June 16, 2026. Bruce, the big call. Since 1871 we have not been a sovereign nation. We have been under British Admiralty law. The celebration in Washington, D.C. on Flag Day Sunday 14th of June symbolized that we were now a sovereign nation and not under rule of the UK. Over the weekend, very good sources have said Tier 4B, us, the Internet Group, could look for exchange appointment notification by Wednesday or Thursday 16, June 17, 2026. Funds for exchanges have been backed, moved and put in place for exchanges. The new U.S. Node cash was available at the redemption centers. Guru Information and Intel J2s. June 16, 2026. The tapes exist. They told you the Situation Room was the most secure space on Earth. No phones. No recordings. No leaks. Ever. Until now. Someone recorded everything. The meetings on Iran. The meetings on the strikes. And the one meeting they never wanted you to know about, 107, JFK Jr., on Telegram. March 14, 2026. 2:17 a.m. 6 people in the room. Vance. Hegseth. Patel. A CIA liaison whose name I cannot print. One Secret Service detail outside the door, removed at Trump's request. The subject, the Epstein files. Not the redacted ones. Not the 53 names Massey is pushing through Congress. The full architecture. The client list. The flight operations. The funding channels. Names that would collapse 3 European governments and end 2 American political dynasties overnight. Trump spoke 7 words on that tape. Release them all. Every single name. The room went silent. Now here's what the media won't tell you. They're calling it a leak. They're saying Trump is furious. They're saying he launched a mole hunt. He planted the mole Operation Sunlight. The book drops June 23. Regime change by Haberman and Swan. 1,000 interviews. But the tapes weren't interviews. They were evidence. Delivered on purpose. Through a channel that cannot be traced back to the Oval Office. The mole hunt is theater. For them. So the names on that list think they still have time to run. They don't. The media is doing exactly what he wanted, amplifying the story. Making it impossible to bury. By June 23, every newsroom on Earth will be covering this book. And when they open it, they won't find politics. They'll find names. Citroom 0314217 Sunlight Active Epstein Full 0623. You asked me months ago, when will the names drop? This is your answer, not through Congress. Not through the courts. Through a book that 200 million people will read. Undeniable. Unredacted. Unstoppable. 8 days. The clock is live. They cannot stop what was recorded. What we think we know as of Wednesday, June 17, 2026. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth on Face the Nation. Americans should expect similar operations like Venezuela in places like Ecuador and Guatemala. It's called the America's Counter-Cartel Coalition. We're forming it with partner governments all around Central and South America to go after, defeat and destroy foreign terrorist organizations. For 47 years, the Rothschild, who has controlled European banking from Geneva since at least 1815, owned the sky through a network of 22 atmospheric modification stations that could steer hurricanes, trigger droughts, manufacture floods and create earthquakes. Their climate throne was funded through a labyrinth of NGOs, carbon credit exchanges, and green energy foundations. Last Wednesday, the final station was seized by a joint military operation involving 6 nations. Hurricane Katrina was caused by a transmission burst from the Marine Biology Research Center in the Caribbean. The 2010 Haiti earthquake, identical frequency signature originating from a station in Venezuela that was disguised as a telecommunications relay. The 2011 Fukushima earthquake, signature traced to a naval vessel belonging to a shell company in the Cayman Islands under a Rothschild family trust. Why? Because weather controls everything. Food prices, insurance markets, government stability, migration patterns, election outcomes. Climate change was real, but caused by 22 machines owned by one family that were now silent. Sunday, June 14, 2026. The FBI thwarted an explosive drone attack against Sunday's UFC Freedom 250 event on the White House South Lawn and have already taken 5 suspects into custody, it was revealed Tuesday. The multi-phase terror attack allegedly involved using explosive-laden drone aircraft to strike buildings in the vicinity of the event, sparking mass panic and driving the fleeing crowd toward a sniper team poised to pick them off, officials told Fox News Digital. A second wave of attackers then allegedly planned to storm the White House gate, officials said, JFK awakening on Telegram. News. June 16, 2026, breaking special report, Mike Pompeo's confession, at 2. Mike, who was MI6's inside man against Donald Trump. News. June 16, 2026, breaking report, Katie Johnson, the woman who accused Trump of raping her at age 13 in a lawsuit that was later withdrawn, is reportedly now facing criminal charges. Exclusive. Anti-Trump judges tied to the previous DOJ have run a secret network through the American Inns of Court. Hidden meetings and corrupt rulings targeted President Trump. The system is rotten and President Trump is holding these traitors accountable. A major revelation emerged in recent months as President Donald J. Trump leads America's return to law and order. Anti-Trump judges and deep state operatives used the invitation-only American Inns of Court to hold secret meetings, coordinate with former DOJ figures, and influence rulings against the president behind closed doors. The American Inns of Court follows British legal models but operates with secret meetings and hidden membership. The Edward Bennett Williams Inn in Washington, D.C. stands at the center. Members erased online records yet still meet in federal courtrooms and invite DOJ officials to join judges who ruled against Trump. Key members include Judge James Boasberg as president, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson as vice president, Judge Ahmed Maida as secretary who hosted meetings in her courtroom, Judge Beryl Howell, and Chief Justice John Roberts as honorary bencher of the UK Middle Temple. Boasberg organized the private gatherings and participated in Trump-Russia surveillance matters. Jackson advanced progressive causes. The group awarded Judge Beryl Howell for her harsh January 6 sentences. DOJ involvement stands exposed. Earlier this year the EBWN held a meeting on Bob custody and release inside Judge Mehta's courtroom. Attendees featured DOJ Inspector General Michael Horowitz, Deputy Assistant Attorney General Seth Eichenholz, Chief Deputy AG Seth Rosenthal, and about 150 lawyers and judges. Such secret coordination between branches violates ethics. Chief Justice Roberts maintains ties to the Middle Temple in the UK, which receives Soros funding for fellowships. Soros has supported progressive prosecutors and judges nationwide. Roberts defended Boasberg when questioned. This active network of anti-Trump judges, Soros-linked elites, and DOJ insiders coordinates through private clubs. Their pattern of rulings against the president connects to this structure. Investigations must begin. Resignations are required. Americans must support President Trump's fight to drain the swamp. They didn't need armies. They didn't need assassinations. They needed rain, or the absence of it, in the right place at the right time. $4.2 trillion in natural disaster damages since 1979. Insurance payouts flowing to reinsurance companies owned by the same family that caused the disasters. Betting on the destruction they created. Collecting on the suffering they manufactured. The 22 stations are now under Alliance military control. The technology isn't being destroyed, it's being repurposed. Not as a weapon. As a restoration tool. Deserts that were artificially created through 40 years of suppressed rainfall, being reversed. Agricultural regions that were systematically droughted to create food dependency, being restored. Ocean currents that were disrupted to alter fishing economies, being normalized. The planet's weather is returning to its natural state. For the first time in half a century, the rain will fall where it's supposed to fall. The sun will shine where it's supposed to shine. The seasons will behave as they did before someone decided to play God with a frequency transmitter. Climate change was real. But it wasn't caused by your car. It was caused by 22 machines owned by one family. And those machines are now silent. Code, Climate Throne, 22 stations/freak signature/Sky Freed. They blamed you for the weather they manufactured. They taxed you for the carbon they weaponized. The sky is free now. And so is the truth. Every natural disaster you mourned was a business decision.
Hello Patriots, I'm at Restored Republic via a GCR compiled by Judy Byington. EBS and martial law alert. World's largest military sting operation underway. Doing mass arrests in over 32 countries, 10 to 12 day blackout soon, to change over to a new republic, new gold asset-backed economy, new legal system under common law, new health system under med beds, new political system, new education system. A free quantum space Q phone will be provided to all people on Earth to be used for free internet connectivity, texting, calling, banking, voting, and much more. Tier 4B ISO 20022 on Telegram. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and the success of liberty. President John F. Kennedy. Judy note, urgent EBS alert, 10 to 12 day blackout and martial law phase could start tonight, Monday, June 15, 2026. According to martial law on Telegram, EBS protocols were engaged around 7 p.m. on Monday, June 15, 2026, and the clock would strike on the old world at midnight. If not, other sources say the EBS could go off Wednesday, June 17th or Thursday, June 18th. Whatever happens, you are advised to prepare your homes for the coming 10 days of darkness, guided by EBS broadcasts. Stay indoors when called. Breaking. Elite panic as QFS overrides file controls and NESARA activates worldwide. Cell broadcast push incoming. Stay home, stay calm, stay in prayer. Starlink will carry the truth documentaries. World Economic Forum, crimes, biolabs, election fraud, child rescue operations, elite tribunals. Sunday, June 14th, 2026. Everything that happened publicly yesterday, June 14th, 2026. UFC Freedom 250 represented For many observers, the symbolic end of the former maritime law system under satanic occult rule and the beginning of a republic under the new American order and the law of the land. Ezra A. Cohen on Telegram. What the mainstream media was not reporting, how close we were to being obliterated in a nuclear war with Iran. U.S. strikes on Iran uncovered a 5,000-mile master tunnel system that ran from Iran deep state bunkers into hidden U.S. coastal domes along the coasts of California and Florida. Presently, Trump's U.S. Army forces were raiding both ends of the tunnels. On Sunday, June 14, 2026, Flag Day and President Trump's birthday, he made a military strike in Venezuela that eliminated the most wanted gang leader in the Western Hemisphere. The U.S. housed a vast network of underground cities, military bases, and deep state tunnels from Edwards Air Force Base to Vandenberg, 29 Palms, Catalina Island, Tonopah, Area 51, numerous COG facilities, Arizona sites at Wikiup, Page, Superstition Mountains, Fort Huachuca, the Grand Canyon, which conceals ancient underground cities with hundreds of rooms and Egyptian-style artifacts. Sedona's vortices allegedly cover a Lemurian colony and reptilian bases under Boynton Canyon. California's Edwards Air Force Base links via 50-mile tube shuttles to the massive Tehachapi Anthill Complex. This facility, over 2 miles deep, houses cloned humans, gray aliens, reptiloids, and teams conducting genetic experiments and mind control. China Lake and Deep Springs function as major sites for alien-human bioalteration programs and electromagnetic conflicts. Mount Shasta hides tunnels to UFO bases in the Lemurian Telos City. Denver International Airport in Atlanta hosts enormous Illuminati underground complexes. These coast-to-coast networks enable deep state and regressive alien collaborations on experiments against humanity. On Friday midnight, 12th of June, 2026, through an act of Congress, the deep state lost its eyes. They cannot query you anymore. They cannot listen without military authorization. They cannot use national security as a shield for political persecution. On that same Friday, Trump signed National Security Presidential Memorandum 12, transfers control of all national security systems to a restructured military intelligence command under NSA oversight. Every government server, every classified network, every intelligence node was now controlled by the military. Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Everybody should listen to that. Thomas Massie has invoked Article 1, Section 6 of the United States Constitution. Speech and debate clause, absolute immunity, no prosecution, no injunction. No court in America can stop him. Read the names of billionaires, heads of state, media owners, tech founders, 3 sitting members of Congress, 2 former intelligence directors, and 1 name that will collapse a $400 billion empire overnight. The names include people still on television, still running companies, still attending state dinners, still advising governments. They tried everything to stop this. The DOJ offered Massie a classified briefing on June 3rd, a bribe disguised as national security. He refused. On June 7th, his chief of staff's phone was accessed remotely. On June 11th, a sealed motion was filed to invoke executive privilege. Denied. You were told the Epstein files were released. You were told transparency won. That was the redacted version. What you received was 9,400 pages with 2,317 redactions. Names replaced with black bars. Flight logs with rows deleted. Testimony with entire paragraphs removed. What Massie has is the unredacted original, obtained through a constitutional mechanism that bypasses DOJ, FBI, and the classification system entirely. This is why they panicked. There was a Situation Room meeting on July 17, 2025, composed of senior advisors without the president present. The question on the table: How do we manage this? The answer they chose? Delay. EBS blackout martial law lockdowns. The quantum space Q phone, or called Pi phone, will be used for internet connectivity, texting and calling, banking, voting, and much more. Tier 4 BISO 20022 on Telegram. Q phones will be provided free of charge to all people on Earth. The QFS will establish a private internet network on triple code and maybe an 8G network for SATCOM. The Q phone features a 3D interactive holographic display. It will be one of the main credit tools and most urgent expenditures in the daily life for retail consumption and for domestic and international commercial business, and is a subserver to abuse and control the quantum system with Stellar plus Starlink. The Q phone is developed and manufactured in Germany and UK with final software updates in the US. This is a 3D phone and it is at the highest quality. It's a $500 billion manufacturing business in 3 countries, and some other countries like Japan, they are assembled in different warehouses throughout the world. We're not getting any more spy phones. Then we can get rid of all those ugly and dangerous cell towers. Monday, June 15th, boom. Trump federalizes 200 Oregon National Guard troops to expose deep state operations behind ICE attacks and Antifa-controlled Portland. Quantum connected on Telegram. Portland has become the last stronghold of a collapsing regime. For months, the ICE facility has been under direct assault by Antifa cells, backed by silent approval of state and city authorities. These were not random protests, they were battlefield operations. Until now, the federal government was blocked from intervening. That ended this week. President Trump ordered Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to federalize 200 Oregon National Guard troops. The order places them under Northern Command for a 60-day deployment, securing ICE personnel and federal property. This is not politics, this is national security. Oregon's Democrat Attorney General immediately sued to block it, knowing exposure is imminent. For years, state leaders covered deep networks, foreign NGO pipelines, intel relays, biometric surveillance grids, installed under public safety and smart city programs. Antifa's street chaos was a distraction. The ICE facility was targeted because it intercepted trafficking cartels and cross-border crimes. Antifa surrounded it to shield the real ops inside Portland. Weapons in agitators' hands were no homemade tools. They were military-grade lasers, encrypted comms, jamming tech, drone systems, all traced back to foreign sponsorship routed through nonprofits, protected by city officials. Trump acted and the deep state countered with lawfare. The lawsuit is a stall tactic to scrub evidence and move assets before federal troops arrive. Governor Tina Kotek parroted the old 2020 script, calling it illegal occupation. That denial is the tell. You don't panic unless your defenses are collapsing, and they are. Black Hawks and surveillance drones already circle the south waterfront. Federal eyes are mapping escape routes and command structures. A September 28th encrypted call to action confirmed renewed Antifa direct action orders, diversions to cover leadership pullouts. Northern Command's mission isn't just to guard ICE, it's to capture handlers, disrupt surveillance grids, and secure data vaults beneath Portland, holding biometric mapping software built with foreign engineered systems. If exposed, it proves Americans were tracked without consent. Trump isn't just sending troops, he's dismantling the hub. Portland was the prototype of globalist control, media cover, proxy militias, lawfare shields, foreign collusion. Now it's being dismantled in real time. Title 10 is in effect. These troops answer to Northern Command. Northern Command answers to Trump. The last stronghold is falling. Portland is just the beginning. Possible timing. EBS alert, 10 to 12 day blackout and martial law phase starting tonight, Monday, June 15, 2026. Thursday, June 19, 2026, EBS signals will prepare the world for 10 days of darkness. White Hat sources confirmed that the world's largest military sting operation with mass arrests now active in over 32 major countries, targeting UN globalist networks and deep state crimes. Timeline according to this is the fake Val Thor, not the real one that is on my channel, Commander Thor, that you guys talk to on Telegram and in the comment section. That's not him. There's one that's fake, and so just heads up on that. What we think we know as of Tuesday, June 16, 2026. Monday, June 15th, Tim Barton, a real estate investor with $400 million in assets, says the Biden FBI raided and arrested him because he was an outspoken Donald Trump supporter. He was dragged out of my bed at 5 a.m. by the FBI, and they put leg irons on his legs before walking him out. He says the reason for this was he was a whistleblower and found that Chinese investors were suspiciously moving money around and buying American properties. He was arrested. He says he was targeted even though he was a whistleblower just because he supported Donald Trump. I found he is a political donor of Donald Trump. That's clearly the real reason for being targeted. In 1776, the Illuminati was founded in Bavaria. The Rothschild banking empire began its global expansion. The American Revolution broke out. Tartaria began to disappear from the maps, all in the same year. Coincidence? Tartaria was not a myth. It was a vast, ancient civilization with advanced free energy technology, great architecture using sacred geometry, a harmonious way of living with the natural. Monday, June 15th, 5 anti-Trump judges exposed as members of a secret, invite-only judicial club, the American Inns of Court. Hidden meetings, DOJ insiders showing up since. Monday, June 15th, disclosure, declassified and authorized, the explosive truth about Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. Monday, June 15, 2026. The war is over. The strait is open. The oil flows. While you were sleeping, the world changed. Q on Telegram. At 9:47 p.m. Eastern on June 14, 2026, his 80th birthday, the President of the United States posted 6 sentences that ended a war, reopened the most important shipping lane on Earth, and collapsed the price of oil in under 4 minutes. Ships of the world, start your engines. Let the oil flow. Those were not improvised words. That was a prearranged signal. Within 90 seconds of that post, 3 aircraft carrier groups began withdrawal protocols simultaneously. The USS Eisenhower, the USS Lincoln, the USS Truman synchronized to the second. You do not coordinate 3 carrier groups in 90 seconds unless the order was already given. The deal was signed before he posted. What they're telling you, a memorandum of understanding brokered by Pakistan. What actually happened? A back-channel agreement finalized on June 8th in Muscat, Oman, 6 days before the public announcement. The signing in Switzerland on Friday is theater. The real signatures were placed in Muscat by individuals whose names will never appear in any press release. Iran did not agree to dismantle its nuclear program because of sanctions. Iran agreed because they were shown what comes next. The same presentation, the same room, the same 4-star general who briefed Pyongyang in 2018 before Kim crossed the DMZ, the same words, you have seen what we can do. Now see what we will do. They chose survival. 60-day window, full enriched uranium stockpile elimination, IAEA inspectors with unrestricted access, not the theater of 2015, real access, military sites included, and in exchange, $147 billion in frozen assets released, sanctions lifted, oil exports resumed immediately. You were told this was impossible. 4 indictments, 2 impeachments, 91 felony charges, a raid on his home. They took his passport. They froze his accounts. They told you he was finished. Today, he ended a war from his living room on his 80th birthday. No army invaded. No city was bombed. No American soldier died. 1 man, 1 post, 1 signal. The oil markets collapsed 9% in 11 minutes. Bitcoin surged past $106,000. Gold dropped $47. The entire global financial architecture shifted in the time it takes to read his post. This is not politics. This is not diplomacy. This is the most powerful human being alive, demonstrating that he answers to no one, and nothing can stop what was set in motion. June 8th, Muscat. June 14th, Signal. June 20th, Switzerland. July 4th, you will understand everything. Code, Hormuz open, Muscat, 0608, 3CG withdrawal, Signal birthday, phase complete. On Friday, June 12th, at exactly 5:21 p.m. Eastern, the United States Department of Commerce issued an emergency directive to Anthropic, the company behind the most advanced AI ever built. The order, suspend all access immediately, New World Order on Telegram. They shut it down because it saw the same thing. Two systems, Fable 5 and Mythos 5, were pulled offline within minutes. No warning, no congressional vote, no public explanation beyond two words: national security. They told you it was about export controls, about foreign nationals. That is not why it was shut down. I'm going to tell you what happened in the 72 hours before that order was issued. On June 9th, a classified evaluation was conducted at a facility in Maryland. Mythos 5 was given access to a dataset that has never been made public, a dataset originally compiled under Project Stargate. Between 1972 and 1995, remote viewing session transcripts, temporal probability matrices, pattern recognition data that the CIA spent $20 million collecting and then told the world was inconclusive. The AI did not find it inconclusive. Within 14 minutes of processing, Mythos 5 produced an output that matched, with 99.7% correlation, the same convergence point that Project Looking Glass operators reported in 2012. All timelines lead to the same outcome. The AI confirmed what the machine showed 30 years ago, what the operators saw, what they classified, what they buried, what they told you was fiction. It is not fiction. The output was flagged at 11:47 p.m. on June 9th. By 6 a.m. June 10th, the National Security Council had been briefed. By noon, the directive was being drafted. By June 12th, it was dead. They did not shut it down because of China. They did not shut it down because of export law. They shut it down because an artificial mind confirmed what human consciousness saw decades ago. And they cannot allow that confirmation to exist in a system accessible to 200 million users. You were told future proves past. Now you understand what that means. One man was briefed on the original Looking Glass output before he ever announced his candidacy. He was shown the convergence. He was shown the outcome. He was told, every timeline leads here. You are the constant. That man is now sitting in the Oval Office on his 80th birthday. Nothing was left to chance. Nothing can be left to chance. The outcome is not a hope. It is not a prediction. It is a mathematical certainty confirmed by both human consciousness and artificial intelligence. They can shut down every machine on Earth. They cannot shut down what is coming.
2012 was never about apocalypse.